Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the other post-employment benefits board meeting of June 2nd, 2020. Thank you all for participating. Could you please call the roll with regard to attendance on the board?
Commissioner Moritas,
Here.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Here.
Chair Trentalis.
Here. BR1, Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Quarterly Investment Report for period ending March 31st, 2020. Chris, do you have a report to give or somebody in your staff?
Yes, let me turn to Susan Grant.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. Susan Grant, Finance Director, and I'll just give you a brief report on the OPEB Trust as of March 31st. The fund was valued at a little over 34 million. And I'm going to start my video. There we go. The fund was valued at a little over 34 million as of March 31st. The performance for the quarter, as you would expect, as the stock market lost value in the last several weeks of that quarter. The fund lost 12.16%, but that was, the good news is it's 20 points above what the benchmark would be of 12.36. The fund is invested in both equities and fixed income. The target is about 60% in the equity market, 40% in the fixed income. With equities down in the quarter of 23%, the fixed income helped offset that. And we expect a better quarter for the quarter ended June. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And we'll have our financial advisor available at the second or the regular meeting to do the market update if you'd like to hear that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions of Susan?
No, just a comment that considering what happened at the beginning of March through that month and half of April, it looks like we're not as in bad shape as I thought we possibly might be. So this is pretty good news, actually.
Okay, great. There's no motion or anything. It was just a report, correct? Okay, great. Move on to M1, motion to approve minutes for the March 3rd, 2020 other post-employment benefits trust board meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Moved. Second.
Second, any questions with regard to it? There being none, please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Commissioner McKenzie?
Hang on one second. There you go.
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Yes.
Chair Trentalis.
Yes, and the motion is approved. The minutes are approved. And any other business of the board? There being none, that meeting is now adjourned. We now move on to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board for June 2nd, 2020. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes. Here.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
He's there. We just have we have IT staff working on his audio connection,
Okay.
but he is present.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Here.
Chair Trentalis.
Here. So we begin the meeting with M1. This is a motion to approve the May 5th, 2020 CRA board meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Commissioner McKenzie, can you hear us?
So, Mr. Mayor, if
Well,
we
his
can-
thing says is on mute.
well, we've got IT staff there working on his connection. So that's actually our IT director, Andrew Parker, and visible in his display. If Commissioner McKenzie can just come visible in his display and give us a visual thumbs up or thumbs down while we work on his audio connection, that would be.
This is the 21st century, Mr. Locker.
I am just trying to help out.
Maybe we can call him.
Okay, you're speaking.
There
Can you
you
hear me
I
now?
think we're good.
Yes.
Yeah, I got IT up here.
We have a
You
yes.
can hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yep.
can hear you now.
I don't care.
Okay, so we're just here to approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 meeting.
Use this one. Perfect. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. You know Vaughn, don't you?
Robert, do you approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 meeting?
And no fist bumps.
Yes, I do. I'm
Okay.
sorry. What did you say, Vice Mayor?
No fist bumps.
Why not?
Continue the roll.
It's against the CDC regulations.
Okay, continue the.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Yes.
Chair Trentalis.
Yes, and the motion is approved. The minutes are accepted. Moving on to R1, this is a resolution approving a budget amendment, appropriation of $19,254 from the new Aquatic Center parking garage to the Aquatic Complex renovation project. Anyone have any questions regarding that? There being none, would someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduce.
Introduce.
It's been introduced. Please call the roll.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Lauderdale Community Redevelopment Agency approving the transfer of $19,254 from the new Aquatic Center parking garage to the Aquatic Complex renovations project and providing for an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Yes.
Chair Trentalis.
Yes, and the resolution is approved. R2, a resolution approving a budget amendment, abandon and appropriate $63,290 from the Central City Community Redevelopment Agency Operations Fund to the Emergency Business Assistance Program. Anyone have any questions with regard to that?
I do, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, will this be coming back to us pretty soon in terms of process? So folks will be able to know how to apply for the funding. In other words, at our next meeting or meeting after that?
It will. This is its first stop tonight at the CRA board, and then it will come to you as a commission on the 16th of June. We've already crafted the framework of the program itself, so it's easy to roll out. We wanted that done before we brought it forward. And as soon as it comes through in June at the 16th meeting, it's ready to roll.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Would you like to introduce the resolution?
Be happy to introduce.
Please call the roll.
So, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Fort Lauderdale Community Redevelopment Agency abandoning $63,290 appropriated to the Central City Community Redevelopment Agency Operations Fund and appropriating said amount to the Emergency Business Assistance Program Fund and providing for an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glassman,
Yes.
Chair Trentalis.
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Is there any other business before the CRA that we need to discuss?
There is not.
There's not. Anybody from the commission? There being none, that meeting is now adjourned.
You got to wait 2 minutes.
Take a breather for 2 minutes. You should have a commercial message.
Because this is a short break, we're going to stay live on channel 78. So just for everybody's reference, we're continuing to stay live on channel 78.
Well, no, let's wait. I can see you all this time. Before I never could see you. Commissioner Moritas, I like your new backdrop. Where did she go? I know she is. She purloined one of the pieces.
She went to change outfits for the next meeting.
She purloined one of the pieces of art from the lobby. let's wait until Commissioner Moritas gets back. Okay. Everyone in their seats. Okay, we ready to begin? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale regular meeting. It's June 2nd, 2020. As you all know, City Hall is now closed to the public, which hopefully will change soon. And as a result, we are now meeting in a virtual session. All members of the City Commission are in attendance. We'll call the roll shortly. And we invite anyone who wishes to speak on certain items to please go to our website, which I'll announce in a few moments, how I'll go about doing that. So before we begin our meeting, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to
To the republic, which stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Could you please call the roll, Mr. Clerk?
Commissioner Moritas,
Here.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Here.
Mayor Trentalis.
Here. Thank you. So the City of Fort Lauderdale will be hosting its meetings in a virtual format until further notice. The public can listen to and view the virtual meeting at www.fortlauderdale.gov/FLTV, as well as on Comcast channel 78 and AT&T UVerse channel 99. For those who want to speak on an agenda item and have not already signed up to speak, you can sign up at www.fortlauderdale.gov/V as in Victor C meetings. I'll repeat that. www.fort spelled out FORT fortlauderdale.gov/V as in Victor C meetings, plural. To help ensure the same decorum as our in-person meetings, we ask that you please abide by the following guidelines. Please refrain from any behavior that is disruptive, distractive, profane, or inhibits the meeting in any way. While you are on the phone waiting for your opportunity to speak, please mute the FLTV meeting broadcast on the web, on Comcast or AT&T if watching simultaneously, to avoid delays with the broadcast. I, Dean Trentalis, will call on you when it's your turn to speak and also notify you when your time has expired. City staff is automatically adding speakers into listen-only mode and will be unmuted to speak when recognized. Once you have completed speaking, you will be muted and may either hang up to exit the meeting or stay connected to listen to the remainder of the meeting. So I have a few agenda announcements. CR1, the consent resolution 1 is being pulled from the consent agenda to be heard as a public hearing. So that would be regarding, that's the resolution designating real property located at 900 Northwest 7th Avenue as a green reuse area. CP1, memo revised on page 2, and then OSR 1, city manager requests deferral on that. So that would be OSR 1. That's regarding the ordinance amending the city's comprehensive plan regarding drainage, potable water, underground recharge elements, and so forth and so on.
For the record, Mayor, just one meeting deferral to the 16th, that we just need one to
To the
clean up one
16th
item.
of June?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
For OSR
We'll
1?
take that up and vote on that.
For OSR 1, yeah, so one meeting deferral, please, just to clean up one item between now and June 16th.
Okay, we'll take that up. We'll vote on that when it comes up on the agenda. Okay, so other than those revisions, can I have a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda?
Mayor, I have just 2 amendments for the 2 edits for the minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. On the meeting minutes of Tuesday, May 19th at 6 o'clock on page 16. Jeff, I just wanted to say that in the second paragraph and then in the last paragraph, it only refers to the fact that I was talking about utilizing alleyways, but predominantly I was talking about using all of the parking lots for business expansion, but that's not mentioned anywhere. So I'd appreciate it if it did reflect that it was parking lots and alleyways for the business expansion program. Thank you.
Okay. So is something to be changed there, or you just announcing your?
Well, it says utilizing alleyways in both an expansion to alleyways. I just wanted to say parking lots and alleyways in both of those places on page 16.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your amendment is so noted. Is there anything else? There being none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda?
Moved.
So
Second.
moved and seconded. Thank you, gentlemen. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Commissioner McKenzie.
We can't.
Can't hear.
He's saying yes.
yes,
Nodding.
we have a nod of yes for that vote. Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the minutes and the agenda have been approved. Now, for those of you who are listening, we now move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of multiple items in which they are voted on all at once by the commission. Any member of the commission can pull a consent item to be voted on separately because that member of the commission wishes to discuss the item, may have questions regarding it, or for some other reason. If that item is pulled, you are permitted to speak on that item when the item is taken up separately. If the item is not pulled, now would be the time for you to speak on a consent item before we vote on them, and that will be your only time in which you can speak on the consent item. So as I look at the request to speak, no one has asked to speak on any of the consent items. So with that in mind, does anyone have any items that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? So we'll start with Commissioner Moritas.
No.
No. Vice Mayor?
None. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Well, I've sent staff up there to,
He needs to get a pad so we could write it down.
ID followed by pound.
Okay, Commissioner McKenzie, can you hear me now? Commissioner McKenzie, can you hear me
hang
now?
on, we just have staff that showed back up.
You entered 38175.
Mayor, it's Sorensen. I don't have any to pull.
You have none either? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Let me check with,
I don't have my phone to text him.
I'm calling him right now. No answer. Let's just give it a second.
We need to buy some new technology,
You're gonna have all new stuff when you come back from your break.
really.
The 1970s called and they're coming to get this stuff back.
Okay. This is so archaic.
What are we going to have, Chris?
We're waiting for Robert McKenzie to see if he has any consent agenda items that he'd like to pull.
Yeah, no, I was just asking Chris what technology we're going to have. What are we doing?
I can give that update when we get to city manager reports.
Well,
It's
Can you hear me?
a technology. Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you.
Do you have any consent agenda items you'd like to pull?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so no one's pulling any consent agenda items. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
moved.
Motion to approve.
Moved and second. Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentals.
Yes, and all the items on the consent agenda have now been approved. Thank you, folks. We move on to resolutions. R1, the appointment of board and committee members. Mr. Clerk, would you like to read them into the record?
For the June 16th resolution, consensus nomination, Central City Redevelopment Advisory Board, Leslie Brown and Peter Kaczynski, nominated by Vice Mayor Glassman. Nuisance Abatement Board, Howard Elfman, nominated by Commissioner Sorensen. Individual nominations for the next resolution, Aviation Advisory Board, Robert Kruzik, nominated by Commissioner Moritas. Citizen Police Review Board, Mark Dickerman, nominated by Vice Mayor Glassman. Marine Advisory Board, Steve Witten, nominated by Vice Mayor Glassman. Parks, Rec, and Beaches Board, Robert Payne, nominated by Commissioner McKenzie. And for tonight's resolution, Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, Patricia Hale, nominated by Commissioner Moritas. Aviation Advisory Board, Valerie Vitale, nominated by Commissioner McKenzie. Cemetery System Board of Trustees, John Lilly, nominated by Commissioner Sorensen. And then for Citizen Police Review Board, Lieutenant Cecil Stone, appointed by Chief of Police. Sergeant Nicole Graves, appointed by Chief of Police. Sergeant Matthew Gura, appointed by Chief of Police. And for Code Enforcement Board, Peter Antonoff, appointed by, and that's consensus, appointed by, or nominated by Vice Mayor Glassman. Marine Advisory Board, William Walker, nominated by Commissioner Sorensen. Norbert McLaughlin, nominated by Commissioner McKenzie. Nuisance Abatement Board, Robert Fano, nominated, and that's consensus, nominated by Commissioner Sorensen. And last one, Planning and Zoning Board, William Rotella, nominated by Commissioner Moritas.
Are there any other comments or modifications to those nominations? Okay, there being none, do I hear a motion to, would someone like to introduce the resolution regarding the appointment of board and committee members?
Introduce.
Thank you.
A resolution, the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, appointing and nominating, if applicable, board and committee members as set forth in the exhibit attached hereto and made a part hereof. Commissioner McKenzie? That was
Yes.
yes. Okay. Commissioner Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentals?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. Maybe we should have people hold up flashcards. Yes, no.
I hope we don't have to go to that level.
Okay. R2, resolution approving the submittal of a grant application for $75,000 to the Florida Inland Navigation District for North Fork Riverfront Park Phase 1, final construction design and permitting. Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduce.
Anyone have any questions with regard to this?
I do, Mayor. I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe Chris or staff, just help me understand. What's the process for, how do we choose what park we want to submit to the Florida Inland Navigation District for, park with a kayak launch, stuff like that? I think my district's pretty underrepresented in terms of parks, especially any waterfront access. So I'd like to maybe be considered in the future. I have George English Park, but that's at the very southern boundary of my district. So I have talked with Colliers and Parks and Rec when we're moving forward, looking for some park space. Also in District 1, if we could try to incorporate a waterfront space where neighbors can launch a kayak or a paddleboard or other vessel. Just curious how you choose those.
Yeah, so we could work with you to identify a location in your district that might be eligible for this type of a find grant. Find grants are, they're a little finicky in that each one has to come to the commission for a resolution before we can even make application. to see if we're eligible for the find grant. So what this does tonight is it approves our submittal to find for this grant. This will have to come back to the county if in fact find says, yes, it's eligible and wants to fund it. We'll have to come back to appropriate that funding. So we can work with you to identify through our grant people and our marine people, if there's a find opportunity in your district, we certainly would work towards making this type of a resolution for grant application, and then seeing if they approve it, we'll attempt to appropriate the match.
Are there certain waterways that qualify for that? Is it just the intercoastal, or is it some of the, canals, maybe, or property at the end of the canals?
So I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
The mayor thinks it might be just the intercoastal, and he's probably right, since
think
it
it-
deals with
yeah.
inland navigation. I don't know if we have anybody on our staff that either Phil maybe or Raj, if they could.
Yes, if I may, Chris, I can probably answer some of the questions.
Okay, so let's have Raj turn on his video and help take the discussion from here.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Commission. Commissioner Moritas, in response to your questions.
Hold on a second. Hold on, Raj. We could hardly hear you.
Yeah, you got to speak way up.
You got to speak up.
Okay, so if you bear with me for a second, hopefully, can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
better.
All right, so the requirement, Commissioner, is that it has to be directly connected to the intracoastal waterway.
Okay.
So the canal projects are not eligible because they need to serve public at large. So there needs to be a continuity and the use for the intracoastal waterway. So what we can do is, in response to your earlier question, that we can identify the locations that are going to allow that type of connection. And yes, then of course you have to apply for the grant, and then it has to compete with the other projects in the county, because each county has its allocated set of funds.
Okay, thank you. So maybe Chris, just maybe for the record too, maybe we look at using some of the park money when we're identifying the parcels of land we're buying in District 1. Maybe there's something up towards the northern end that we could try to get some waterfront access for our neighbors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions with regard to this? There being none. Please call the roll. This is on R2.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the resolution is approved. PH1, this is a quasi-judicial ordinance approving a rezoning from residential low-rise multifamily medium-density district to Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed-Use West District. These are townhomes at River Gardens, 534 Northwest 22nd Avenue, STKR Sistrunk LLC. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in. Commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record.
Yeah.
I have
No.
several people
No,
who have
thanks.
signed up to speak, but these are these,
They should all be with the applicant. I
These
believe,
are all-
Mayor,
these are
when I
all with
looked
the
at the names,
applicant.
they were all with T-Don.
okay. Any disclosures, Commissioner Moritas?
Yes, on June 1st, I had a conversation with Rob Stiegel from T-Don.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
None for me. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes, I had conversations with Rob Siegel from T-Don. I met with the HOA, several other HOAs, residents, and numerous site visits.
Okay. Commissioner Sorensen?
None.
Okay. I think I met with the applicant. Can't tell you the exact date, but I do recall that. So, all right. So the people that signed up to speak, I assume Jonathan Keith, Robert Stiegel, and Jeff Kronengold. You folks just want to respond to any questions, I would assume. Are you on the air?
We'll have to unmute them. Just give
This
us
is Jonathan Keith.
Hi, Jonathan. Do you or any of your colleagues want to speak, or is it just for questions?
We're here to answer any questions you may have, but we also have a presentation if you'd like us to present it.
Let me ask
It's
the
up to
commission,
you.
is the commission comfortable with the information they have already in the backup?
Yes, but
Yes.
I did have one question for a mayor when we get a moment.
All right, well, go ahead.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate your time. I did not get a chance to meet with you guys, so I have not really had a chance to talk to you and ask you this, but in reading some of the minutes information from the Planning and Zoning Board, I just wanted to ask in terms of the public participation, the meetings that you had with the neighborhoods surrounding the project and how that went, and if there are any of those kinds of affidavits on file, and if the single-family neighborhood is fine with the townhome development, everyone's okay?
Jeff, you want to take that?
Mr. Mayor, members
Jeff?
of the commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, this is Jeff Kronengold. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yes, Commissioner Glassman, we actually had two public meetings. We had one back in March of 2019 prior to the CRA advisory board and final CRA board approval. And then we had a public participation meeting on January 27, 2020, prior to submitting the zoning application. At that meeting, there were approximately 13 members of the Swimming Estates River Garden Association present, as well as numerous people from the Dorsey Riverbend Association. I will tell you that the response from the community was very favorable, more so than the rezoning of the particular lot. The community was very interested in what we were building, the pricing of what we were offering, whether these would be rentals or whether these would be owned, and some other specifics regarding the project itself. We have submitted a report of both of those public meetings to staff, which I believe the commission has, as well as the required affidavit of public participation notification.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other
You're
questions?
welcome.
Any questions from any other members of the commission?
Just one more question, Mayor, if that's
Okay.
okay. There was just another concern that was expressed in the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Board in terms of some of the lighting and perhaps spillover onto the adjacent properties. And I think that you folks had said that you'd be looking to do some additional landscaping. So has that happened, or is that in the works?
This is Jonathan Keith. Yes, the landscaping plans associated with the overall project have been embellished to add additional landscaping along the southern boundary of the project.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, then do I hear a motion to approve PH1?
Moved.
I hear a second?
Second.
Yeah, this is to close the public hearing, by the way. Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, the public hearing is now closed. This is now for PH1, the ordinance approving the rezoning. Do I hear a motion?
Moved.
Moved and seconded.
An ordinance amending section 47-1.6.b of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Unified Land Development Regulations through the revision of the official zoning map of the City of Fort Lauderdale and Schedule A revised compilation attached thereto, and by reference made a part thereof so as to rezone from residential low-rise multifamily medium-density district to Northwest Regional Activity Center Mixed-Use West District, all of Lot 25, Block 2, River Gardens, according to plat thereof, recorded in Plat Book 19, page 23 of the Public Records of Broward County, Florida, located west of Northwest 21st Terrace, north of Northwest 5th Street, east of Northwest 22nd Avenue, and south of Northwest 6th Street. All said lands being in the City of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and PH1 is approved. PH2, public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving the Parks, Recreation, and Beaches Advisory Board's recommendation for approval of the Hort Park Playground Replacement Project as provided in the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolution. Someone like to introduce the item?
Introduced.
I have a question. Chris, or maybe Phil can answer this. When I looked at the backup information, I couldn't quite figure out what is the actual cost for the playground equipment, because it seems to have been lumped in with a lot of other stuff, and I was just wondering what the actual playground
Sure.
equipment is going to be.
Yeah, no, we can get that for you. So let me just talk a little bit about these two public
Chris.
hearings and then,
Chris,
yes,
it's an M1.
correct. Yeah, that's what I'm about to point to. So make just one explanation here. So PH2 and PH3, what these are the public hearings to be able to spend bond dollars.
Right.
And then when we get to M1 is where we get to the costs of each of the playgrounds. So I can pull that out of M1 for you. Just
Okay. Well, I mean, since the subject had come up, I know it's an M1, but but even in M1, it's lumped together with Kuntihatchee. So it says, I want to know what is it specifically for Hort. But
okay,
all
so
right.
Hort Park is at a cost of $316,394, and Kuntihatchee Park at $284,447. So
Okay.
316 and 284.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Hort playground, and let me go back to that. The rendering, and this costs $300,000. I'm looking at the Exhibit 2 on PH2.
So why don't I ask Phil to
This is outrageous. I mean, $300,000 for this?
go live and talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as costs of recreation equipment. Phil, are you able to come live to the meeting?
I am. So all that equipment is on a continuing contract that we use quite frequently for playgrounds. But you're correct, Mayor. Playgrounds are expensive, but that's what you get for that amount of money. So most playgrounds now are running at least that, and sometimes more, to replace a playground, and both of those are in
Does this
definitely.
include installation?
Yes, it does.
Does it come with a warranty?
There is a warranty. I'm not for sure on parts and labor, but it does come with a warranty. So it's all in included as far as the inspection. They're all certified playground installers, so it's all inclusive of that price.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mayor. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I also had those concerns actually in my meeting yesterday with Chris. I raised these issues. I look at the Hort Park and then I look at the Kuntihatchee Park, and I don't know, is everything that's included on those renderings, Phil, what we're actually getting? And then, my experience, for instance, like Kaboom comes in and in a day they put in a whole park and you pay $0. So I don't understand either how each of these, what I'm looking at for Hort and for Kuntihatchee, they're each over like $350,000. Like, are we just looking at 3 different things and maybe like a swing set? I mean, can you walk us through those conceptual drawings? Is that what exactly is so costly that we're looking at here?
Vice Mayor, I don't know that I could address that specifically. I'm not the one that would know the price of each piece of equipment. What we did was work with the budget that was allowed in the bond, understanding what the neighborhood wanted. We went to both neighborhoods, sat down with them, talked about what they could afford and what they wanted with the amount that was in the bond. And that is what they both chose. So there are little different styles for each different neighborhood. The one at Hort has some shade structures. So you got shade. The one at Kuntihatchee is a little more natural. There's a lot of trees there. So each one's a little different, but that's what the neighborhoods picked with the amount of money they had to use.
Okay.
Phil, doesn't this include the surface, new surface?
Yeah, I believe at Coontehatchee, it's probably the ADA wood chips. That's kind of a natural park, and the playground is more of a natural looking playground. And then the other one is probably a poured in place, a little more expensive servicing. So that's why you probably get less at Hort, because you're including the servicing there as well. Where at Coonte, you have it's a lot cheaper surfacing there at that park.
Exactly. And if any of you have been to Hort before, you'll know it's just a massive surface area that this thing's going to be covering. That in and of itself, before you even get the equipment, has significant cost to it, to ensure, because you got to have basically a cushioning to ensure, like my daughters 3 and 6, when they fall, that they're going to be safe, and that it's all safe and well cushioned. So that's that in and of itself is very expensive.
Okay. All right. Any other questions with regard to this?
I have a quick question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Curious when I'm reading about this. So we did have the 4 signature projects, and then this project came up for us to do at this point also. What's the process for kind of moving projects to the top of the line, so to speak? Do we just get a recommendation from the Parks Board and then we kind of rearrange some project priorities?
Commissioner, I think that some of those signature projects that we voted on and approved, they take a lot more time to design and engineer and eventually fabricate. These other smaller projects, I know in particular this Hort Park playground project has been sitting around for a very long time, and these folks have been promised for a very long time the replacement of what they've got there now. And
sure.
so
And
it seems like it's easier to implement and more quickly. It can be implemented more quickly than, say, another project that might be germinating in that district. So, does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I'd like to know, because right now I'm only focusing on in my district one project, the Lockhart Park. Should I also be paying attention? Do I have other parks that will be rebuilt in my district too that I need to pay attention to?
It would be up. I mean, the list that was attached to M1. I think that the recommendation of the Parks Board is where we would, it's basically coming up, percolating up from that board in terms of the priorities. So, working with that board and working with Phil would be a way to push forward any other parks that you feel that are on the list that can move up to the head of the line, while at the same time, these other projects, the larger projects, the more signature projects are still happening. So they can work on parallel paths. One does not preclude the other from happening.
Okay. And that just answers my questions. I guess I didn't realize we were doing a lot of parallel path type stuff. I thought we were just going for the 4 projects and then getting to other things. But if we are doing things along parallel paths.
Yeah, this is an easy project to do.
All right.
Commissioner McKenzie, did you have a question from before?
No, I'm just going to put folks at ease. We've seen parks materialize for over the last 6 years, especially with playgrounds. I've done one, probably the latest one we did was at Lincoln Park, and we spent about $110,000. It took about a couple years to get there. It was through one of the, I think the NCIP projects, but it's installed. And I did this. I questioned, the cost for equipment. And if you looked at a lot of the kaboom stuff that we have done over in your district, Vice Mayor, with the Sis-Trunk Park, if you put a cost to it, it would probably be at the same price as what you're seeing right now, if not more. But you had Spirit Airlines and all those folks coming in paying for it, but it's a long process to get there. But and as parks go through and look at our parks and identify playgrounds that are in bad shape, they look at it and they try to put it somewhere, either the bond or in some of these NCIP projects. So just for a level of comfort, I think we are just there where the numbers are for these type of equipment and playgrounds.
And Chris, Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Commissioner. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but AECOM is coming on board to kind of be the project manager for this, or Phil, isn't that right? So they're going to help us kind of sit down with us. What are the top priorities for each of our districts and so forth?
Correct, they are, and I'll turn it back over to Phil, but I think our intent in just starting to get projects moving forward is we looked at land acquisition and we looked at this very, very, very low hanging fruit as a way that we, with our internal staff, could look at a couple parks that were in need of playground equipment and work those internally while we negotiated with AECOM. Phil, was that your thought, just to get some movement going with the bond dollars?
It is, and these two in particular, along with the two in Rio Vista that we're working on because of the sewer break, have been around as was mentioned by the mayor for years. These two actually started way before the bond was even discussed, and so we've been working with the neighborhood. And when we got to the bond, we discussed with the neighborhood, did they want to wait and work with the bond dollars and look at the playground at the same time? And both the neighborhoods wanted to go ahead and finish out the playgrounds now. And then the money that's left in their accounts in those two parks, and we'll do that. And I would add that I did meet with AECOM today with my staff and some of their staff. So they are putting together a kind of a phase one to look at the signature projects and start on those, as well as what can we do in the short term. And a lot of playgrounds, lighting, things like that will happen sooner than later, so we can start showing some quick wins and things that people are ready to go and see these bond dollars in action. So as the city manager mentioned, we're working both short term and longer term all at the same time.
All right, great. Thank you. Phil, I see you're at Fort Lauderdale Beach. I hope you're keeping your social distancing from the other people on the sand.
Yeah. It looks beautiful.
It does, I know. Okay, would someone like to move PH2?
Moved.
It's a resolution to be introduced. We do the formalities of a public hearing, since it's required under the documentation.
Oh, okay, so this would be a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentals.
Yes, and public hearing is now closed. Someone like to introduce PH2?
Introduced.
It's introduced.
A resolution, the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving the Parks, Recreation, and Beaches Advisory Board's recommendation for approval of the Hort Park Playground Replacement Project as provided in the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolution number 18-261 and the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolution number 20-08. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentals.
Yes, and the resolution is approved. PH3, it's a public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving the Parks, Recreation, and Beach Advisory Board's recommendation for approval of the Coontahatchee Park Playground Replacement Project as provided in the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolutions. I have no one signed up to speak. Anyone have any questions with regard to this? Being none, someone please move to close public hearing.
Moved.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentals.
Yes, and public hearing is now closed. Someone please introduce the resolution.
Introduced.
A resolution, the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving the Parks, Recreation, and Beaches Advisory Board's recommendation for approval of the Coontahatchee Park Playground Replacement Project as provided in the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolution number 18-261 and the Parks and Recreation Bond Resolution number 20-08. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentals.
Yes, and the resolution is now approved. M1, motion approving contracts for the
Excuse
Hort
me,
Park.
Mr. Mayor. Should
I'm
we
sorry,
do
I'm sorry.
CR1?
I'm sorry. We're going to move back to CR1. Originally, when we discussed the opening of the meeting, we had indicated that CR1 would be moved to a public hearing. So let's go back to CR1. This is a resolution designating real property located at 900 Northwest 7th Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, as a green reuse area pursuant to Florida's Brownfields Redevelopment Act. No one has signed up to speak. Do we have one person sign up to speak? Okay. Brett Drummond. Brett, are you on the line?
Available to answer any questions you may have.
Brett? There you go.
Yes.
Are
Can you
you
hear me?
just here to answer questions, Brett?
Yes, sir. I represent the applicant 7 on 7th.
Okay, very good. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? There being none, do I have to close public hearing? Someone please like to move to close public hearing?
Moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and public hearing is now closed. Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
It's been introduced.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, making certain findings and designating the real property located at 900 Northwest 7th Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33311, folio number 494-234-059-750, as a green reuse area pursuant to Section 376.802C Florida statutes for the purpose of rehabilitation, job creation, and promoting economic redevelopment, authorizing the City of Fort Lauderdale to notify the Florida Department of Environmental Protection of said designation, providing an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the item is approved. Folks, we need to go back to R2. Jeff did not read the resolution into the record, so I'm going to ask that we revote on that. So, Jeff, could you please go back and read the resolution into the record?
Thank you, Mayor. And
Which one
Vice
is it?
Mayor Glassman, I think you had introduced this.
Okay.
Which one is it?
Can you please reintroduce the resolution?
R2,
Yes.
Mackenzie,
Introduce.
R2.
R2.
Introduce.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving the submittal of a grant application in the amount of $75,000 to the Florida Inland Navigational District for North Fork Riverfront Park Phase 1 final construction, designating and permitting, delegating authority to the city manager to execute the grant application and any and all documents necessary or incidental thereto, and providing for an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the item is now officially approved. I lost my place. We did M1? Did we do M1? We did. No, yeah, okay. That's what I thought. We're at M1, motion approving contracts for Hort Park and Cootiehatchee Parks Playground Replacement Projects. Someone like to move the item?
Moved.
Do I hear a second? Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
yes, and the motion is approved. OFR 1, this is an ordinance amending, this is a first reading of an ordinance amending section 13-55 fireworks manufacture, public display permit by amending requirements for fireworks and pyrotechnic displays and assessed fees. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? There being none, someone like to introduce the resolution? Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduce.
Okay, it's been introduced.
An ordinance amending section 13-55 fireworks manufacture public display permit of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to amend requirements for fireworks and pyrotechnic displays and assessed fees, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinance provisions, and providing for an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the ordinance is approved on first reading. An ordinance amending, this is OFR 2, an ordinance amending Chapter 28 of the city's Code of Ordinances to provide for a stormwater management program assessment. Someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduced.
It's been introduced by Commissioner Sorensen.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, relating to the provision of stormwater management program to construct, reconstruct, repair, improve, and extend stormwater management systems throughout the incorporated areas of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending Chapter 28, Water, Wastewater, and Stormwater of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to authorize the imposition and collection of stormwater management program assessments against property, providing certain definitions, establishing a procedure for imposing stormwater management program assessments, providing that stormwater management program assessments constitute a lien on assessed property upon adoption of assessment rule, providing that the lien for a stormwater management program assessment collected pursuant to sections 197.3632 and 197.3635 Florida statutes upon perfection shall attach to the property on the prior January 1 lien date for ad valorem taxes, providing that perfected lien shall be equal in rank and dignity with the liens of all state, local, district, or municipal taxes and assessments, and superior in dignity to all other prior liens, mortgages, titles, and claims, providing a procedure for collection of stormwater assessments, providing a mechanism for the imposition of assessments of government property, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman.
Before I vote, Jeff, Chris, I just want to ask a question. This will be effective October 1, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I just want to make sure, because this is going to be a very significant change for the multifamily buildings, the condominiums, co-ops, et cetera, because this will affect their budgets that they'll all be preparing for their new year. Because from now on, the associations will not be getting these bills. They'll be going on the individual tax bills, correct, of the individual condo owners?
Yes, it would be removed from the utility bill and assessed on the, you'd see it on the trim notice in the annual ad valorem assessment.
Right, so this, I just want to impress upon everyone that this needs to be an education campaign for all of the buildings in our city. This will affect their budgets. They will not be, their maintenance fees, their assessments, just so that they know what's coming. We have to get going on this because obviously, before you know it, it will be time for them to prepare their budgets, and they need to know about this change. It's significant.
It'll be
Well,
paid at the condo level.
Vice Mayor, that there the cost is being assessed directly against the homeowner, so the associations will not be charged these amounts. So
Correct, but typically when an association prepares a budget, they know what their bills are going to be as an association, and they factor that in to what the monthly maintenance assessments will be per individual homeowner. That will no longer be the case.
right, so that's a good thing.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is, so if the association, that they can actually perhaps lower the maintenance, but they need to understand that this is coming. I'm just not confident that they all know it's coming, and that they will not have to factor that into the monthly maintenance that each individual unit owner pays. And they have to know that this bill will now be on the individual unit owner's tax property bill. That's all.
We'll have to get that message out. You're right.
Thank you.
Okay, please call the roll. Well, we're in the middle of roll call. Do you vote yes or no?
I vote yes. I just wanted to make that point. I didn't know we were.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the ordinance is now approved on first reading. Ordinance is on second reading. OSR 1 ordinance amending the city's comprehensive plan, future land use element, and the general sanitary sewer, solid waste, drainage, potable water, and natural groundwater recharge elements, and so forth and so on.
Mr. Mayor, I seek deferral on this one to June 16th.
All right, so the city manager asked that we defer this to June 16th. Do I hear a motion to defer?
Move to defer.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to June 16th. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the item will be continued on June 16th. OSR 2, quasi judicial ordinance approving rezoning from industrial to heavy commercial light industrial. This is Thrive, 701 to 748 Northwest Fifth Avenue, Thrive Development Group, Inc. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in. Commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. Commissioner Moraes, do you have any additional disclosures to make?
Not additional.
Vice Mayor?
Nothing additional. Thank you.
Commissioner McKenzie?
None additional.
Commissioner Sorensen?
I just want to affirm what my original one was, which is May 28, 2019, meeting with John Holliday.
Okay, I have no additional disclosures. One person to sign up to speak, Matthew Scott, I believe, is there on behalf of the applicant. Anyone have any questions with regard to this item? Okay, there being none. Mr. Scott, you just wanted to respond to questions?
Looks like we need to unmute him.
Yes,
He's
Mayor.
unmuted.
Hello, Mr. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, I'm here to respond to any questions.
Okay, there being none, do I hear a motion to close public hearing?
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes. Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and public hearing is now closed with regard to OSR 2. Would someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduce.
It's been introduced. Please call the roll.
An ordinance amending section 47-1.6.b of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Unified Land Development Regulations through the revision of the official zoning map of City of Fort Lauderdale and Schedule A revised compilation attached thereto and by reference made a part thereof so as to rezone from 1 general industrial to B3 heavy commercial light industrial business district, all of lots 7 through 24 inclusive, block 281 Progresso, according to the plat thereof recorded in Plat Book 2, page 18 of the public records of Dade County, Florida, located west of Northwest Fifth Avenue, north of Northwest 7th Street, east of Northwest 8th Avenue, and south of Northwest 8th Street. All said land situate, lying and being in the city of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Commissioner McKenzie,
No.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the item is now approved on second reading. OSR 3, quasi judicial ordinance approving rezoning from from residential multifamily mid-rise, medium high density to heavy commercial light industrial. This is at 405 Northwest 7th Street, Thrive Development Group. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in. Commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. Commissioner Moritas, do you have any additional disclosures?
No. No thanks.
Vice Mayor?
No additional.
Commissioner McKenzie?
No additional.
Commissioner Sorensen?
May 28, 2019, John Holliday. Thank you.
Okay. I have one person who signed up. It's the applicant. Anybody, if there's no one else has asked to speak, so do I hear a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner
No.
Sorensen,
Well, this is to close
Close
public hearing. Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and public hearing is now closed. By the way, I didn't make an announcement with regard to my disclosures. I have no additional disclosures. So do I hear someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduce.
It's been introduced. Please call the roll.
An ordinance amending section 47-1.6.b of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Unified Land Development Regulations through the revision of the official zoning map of the City of Fort Lauderdale on Schedule A revised compilation attached thereto and by reference made a part thereof, so as to rezone from RMM 25 residential multifamily and mid-rise, medium-high district, density district to B3 heavy commercial light industrial business district, all of the lots 21 through 24 inclusive, block 282, according to the plat thereof recorded in Plat Book 2, page 18 of the public records of Dade County, Florida, located west of Northwest 4th Avenue, north of Northwest 7th Avenue, east of Northwest 5th Avenue, and south of Northwest 8th Street. All said land situate, lying and being in the City of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Commissioner McKenzie,
No.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the ordinance is now approved on second reading. OSR 4, this is an ordinance amending section 26.1, subsections 26-91A, 26-161A of the Code of Ordinances to increase fines for parking violations and establishing parking zones and rates for on and off-street parking zones effective July 1st, 2020. Before we do this, Chris, how aggressive are we being with regard to, overtime parking, considering what's going on in our community today?
So as we've started to open public parking back up, we've started to open back up or increase our enforcement of that parking along with it. We've seen that the Barrier Island parking obviously came back pretty quickly with the reopening of the beach. We're using our discretion certainly and are mindful of the businesses and restaurants that we've offered free parking to for people to be able to stop and pick up to-go orders. So it's a bit of a balanced approach across the city, but we've started to enforce again on the Barrier Island just because we've had very full parking out there since the beach has opened up.
Okay. Well, it would just seem counterintuitive to be, nabbing people who are trying to dine in our restaurants that are barely filling up and to come out and see a $40 parking ticket on their windshield, for, being overtime for 20 minutes or 5 minutes. So, I personally think that we should lighten up on our enforcement simply because we're trying to encourage people. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I just feel that, we're in a very tender moment now and coming back economically. And I just think it's important to try to encourage people to come visit our downtown.
I would agree. I would agree.
I concur with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so any other questions? Otherwise, please call. Someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduce.
Thank you.
An ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending section 26-1 and subsections 26-91A and 26-161A of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to revise the definition of resident, increase fines for parking violations, delete specific references to on and off-street metered parking spaces, establish parking zones for on and off-street parking, establish resident and non-resident rates for each parking zone, and providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinance provisions, and an effective date. Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the ordinance is approved on second reading. Before we go into our reports, I just want to ask if we could share a moment of silence. Very prominent individual passed away this week in Fort Lauderdale. Her name was Vivian Dempsey. She was the matriarch of South Middle River and had always been recognized as a very calming influence in a neighborhood that often saw a lot of enthusiasm and exuberance as they tried to develop a neighborhood that has seen so many changes and it's really blossomed into a wonderful neighborhood. And I wonder if we could just take a moment and respect her with a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor, was there someone else that you wanted us to recognize?
I did, Mayor, and thank you. I was actually going to mention her in my reports, but that would be great. By the way, I will mention Vivian was incredible. For those that don't know, she actually was personally responsible for planting over 3,000 trees in South Middle River. So that's quite an accomplishment. Patty Myers, just a wonderful woman for over 23 years. I met her when she began working with the Fort Lauderdale Children's Theater. Now it's called the Florida Children's Theater. And just passed away also the day after Vivian passed away. And that is a loss. She had a wonderful way of working with children and through theater, brought a lot of joy to their lives, and she will also be missed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lagerbloom, you have the floor.
So, Mr. Mayor, let's work our way through these couple of reports that are published, and then I'll give some updates and take questions, and we'll listen to some commission reports. So the first thing we have is this quarterly investment report for the period ending March 31st, 2020. Let me turn it over to Susan Grant or any of our financial advisors who might want to make a further presentation than we did at the OPEB meeting and see if there's any questions from the commission. So Susan Grant, are you there?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And Richard is on the line also. I see he's on video. So this is the investment report for the quarter ended March 31st. Our yield for the quarter is, let's see here, it says start my video, and there I am again. Our yield for the quarter is 1.19, and that is up from the quarter ended December 31st, which was 0.6%. So the yield is up from the previous quarter. It is behind the benchmark, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First, as COVID was coming aboard, we were accumulating some liquidity, number one. And the second is, if you remember, in April, we approved the investment in the local government investment pools. So we were holding on to some cash in anticipation of investing in those, which we did in April for both bond funds and some other cash reserves. So that's the report for the quarter ended March 31st, and Richard is online and is going to give just a brief market update, and then we're both available for questions.
Okay, so I'll keep it brief. So in the first quarter, we saw the biggest impact from the pandemic really hit in the last couple weeks. The Federal Reserve responded by dropping interest rates 150 basis points down to zero. So essentially taking rates that had sort of struggled over the prior 2 years to get up to 2%, which was low, but at least it was in line with inflation. Basically took us back to zero again to stimulate liquidity in the market. They then also proceeded to implement basically everything that they did in the credit crisis, a whole host of programs to support different parts of the financial market, different parts of the economy. Almost overnight, they implemented all of these measures and went further. Basically, the market, we saw a major flight to quality as investors fled from other assets and started buying U.S. Treasuries and high quality assets during this period. That actually increased the value of the city's investments. Your portfolio is basically structured and designed for exactly this kind of market. Your investment objectives are safety first and then liquidity. So when everything else is doing well, you don't quite earn as much, but in a down market like this, you actually gain in value. And in fact, just looking at the long-term part of your portfolio, you gained in excess of $6 million in the first quarter when everything else was losing value. So, from where we are now, we think the portfolio continues to be well structured for this kind of market. We have to be very cautious and careful, have increased surveillance when it comes to the corporate or corporate-like holdings that are in your portfolio. That being said, a number of these programs that the Fed has implemented have been working well, at least in the minds of investors, to support those markets. And that only represents something like 25% of your portfolio, with no individual name being much more in excess than 1%. So from here on out, outside of that, we will have to contend with this low interest rate environment. We've already been working on revising projections on interest earnings out of your portfolio to reflect that, and that's been a continuous process with staff. So, you know, good news, you're protected based on the structure of your portfolio. Bad news is that interest earnings are going to be lower going forward here.
Okay, great. Anyone have any questions of Susan or Richard? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
All right, thank you.
Chris?
So the other thing, Mayor, that we've been holding just until we tried to figure out how we could get them back in front of the commission, because they usually came at conference, was communications to the commission. So we elected to put those on tonight as a commission report as well. I guess maybe that's titled under a different section. Do you want to run through those real quick, or do you want me to keep going with my report?
Why don't you just go with yours, and then
Okay.
and then when we get to city
And we'll
commission
get to that.
reports, we can go to that.
Okay, so Commission, I've got several items to talk about tonight under the city manager's report. I'd like to highlight those. I'll tell you sort of what order we'll go in, and then happy to answer any questions. I'd like to talk initially about where we are in our response to COVID-19 and the phase 1 position that we're in, as well as our return to work. I'd like to address the events of Sunday and the protests in Fort Lauderdale. I'd like to address our curfew that we have in place and options going forward, and what we're seeing out of the city and the county. I would like to talk about the 4th of July as a follow-up to the last meeting and have some direction there. And then talk about meeting next week and identifying a date if you want to do that, and then have a discussion on whether or not we begin meeting in person again, or we continue in this Zoom environment. So if that's a roadmap that we can stay on tonight for at least the initial report, we certainly can deviate as we go. So
Okay, why don't you proceed?
let's start with where we are with respect to our COVID-19 response. And I'll say that we're still, as a state, we're still as a county in phase 1 of our reopening. And we're still continuing with the most recent orders that relate to that phase 1. We as a staff, led by Tarlisha Smith, put together a reopening task force for our city facilities. Again, I'll remind everybody that we've generally been able to provide a full level of service, both at city facilities and in the field. It would just take us to a position where we have more employees, even that we have today, more people coming back into the workplace. And so we've contemplated a signage plan and a sanitation plan and a screening plan to be able to bring a lot of our employees back into the workforce so that we can start to have more productive work by being back in the work environment. So watch for that in the next week or so. We should start to see a return to work. We're working with employees who have issues that have childcare issues or have other issues that make that difficult. And there's certainly options we can avail to those employees, as well as other options that they have through different legal things related to COVID-19. So I think you're going to start to see that we look to be more as a normal workforce back in the workplace.
Okay,
starting
so
as quick as next week.
with regard to that, it's my understanding that you're calling back the folks that work in the commission office next week.
Well, certainly they could, we could have any of those folks that are comfortable coming back now. We don't have the building open to the public, but there's the protocols of the distance and the sanitation. We have all that in place, but we're going to have our plan that calls for more consistent signage, more consistent hand sanitation stations. That'll all be in place starting next week.
Okay, so are you so my understanding is that you're requesting that that the folks that we have working for us as members of the commission, that they report to work starting next week. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's certainly up to each individual elected official, but yes, our staff will be coming back. So it would be fine for your staff to come back too.
All right. So is it, will you be able to kind of go through the office and kind of sanitize it before people come back? Is that a process that you're able to, because I don't want them coming back based on the original conditions it's been a couple months. I would personally like my office to be sanitized. I'd like, all the office. I'd like everyone to make their offices available to be sanitized so that when the folks come back to work, that they feel comfortable in knowing that it's a clean, safe place. Do you all agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, we've been doing extra sanitation along the way, even with people that we've had here. We've encouraged our sanitation janitorial company to, in high touch areas, do more thorough cleaning, and we'll ask that they do more of a deep dive.
Well, the reason why I say that is
this
because we have
weekend.
some people that are more sensitive, like Jeanette, for example, who's had health problems. I would want her to feel comfortable coming back on a
I would agree.
regular basis, and just all the offices if possible. Okay, thank you.
Yep. No problem there. Any
And
questions?
those of us that are over 65, thank you.
I didn't know you were over 65.
Oh yeah, way over. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
We've all gotten used to working in much cleaner workplaces than I think we ever have. It makes me wonder why we were the way we were before
Right.
we were hit with a coronavirus. Any other questions on return to work? I see that coming back. It's starting to phase back in. I have every intention of opening our buildings back up to the public for public interaction when we move into phase 2. You might say, when are we going to move into phase 2? I don't know the answer to that question. At this point, it's been a order from Governor DeSantis that Broward County has been allowed to move into phase 1. Typically, when the state takes an action like that and authorizes something, we need to wait for the state to take a second action and authorize the movement into the next phase, which would be phase 2. I think that probably could come fairly soon based upon the numbers that we're seeing and what we're hearing, but we'll wait on the governor to take that action and either move the state into a phase 2 or specifically target those counties that are performing well enough to move into phase 2.
Chris, what comes after? Is there going to be a phase 3, or is phase 2 going to take us to then the emergency orders are lifted and the cities then have jurisdiction over their own population? Or do you have any idea how much longer we're going to be under the county's responsibility?
Well, actually, as it relates to the phases where the order came from the state level, I do believe there's a phase 3. I've always seen it as a 3-phase plan, but I can tell you once we get to phase 3, it's really the final opening of everything that has originally been closed. So it really returns it back to almost life as usual.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, the phases have been defined by the CDC. And and there's certain benchmarks that have to be achieved in order to be able to say, okay, we're ready for that phase. We did achieve that with regard to phase 1. There are certain benchmarks that a community has to reach in order to go into phase 2 as well as phase 3. There are only 3 phases. So we are taking instruction from the governor's office, and then once the governor announces that Broward County is eligible for phase 2, I would imagine, based on previous performance, that the county will probably want to weigh in on whether they will agree with all the elements of the phase 2 opening that the governor would otherwise pronounce.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that?
Please proceed.
Okay, so let me get one more out of the way and then we'll talk about this last week. And I want to talk one more time about the 4th of July since we talked about it at the meeting of last week and get a decision from the commission. I've had some feedback since last week's meeting, and at this point, we really need to make a decision up or down. I can tell you that the thought from the very beginning, and we certainly don't have to go with it, it's much easier to cancel than it is to continue. But the thought that if we could come up with a way that the 4th of July could be celebrated in Fort Lauderdale, not from a gathering at any park and not from a gathering at any parking lot, but individually from people at home, that we could go into a very strong publishing campaign to say this is a stay-at-home event. You know, we're bringing fireworks to you rather than you having to come to them. We made a plan to say the beach probably is a bad idea, but we could look at an assortment of locations around the city. We have tonight a proposal to, if we wanted to move forward, to do an event at Mills Pond Park that could be viewed from neighborhoods by Mills Pond Park, one at Holiday Park, one at a downtown parking deck, and then added to that, because I heard the concern of there being a district without a firework display, one additional display north of Oakland Park in the North Ocean Beach area of the village up there, north of Oakland Park, 32nd, 33rd Street, up in that area, probably from the parking lot of the Beach Community Center. Again, these would be an event that we would publish from the very beginning and say, don't go, enjoy from your house, enjoy while you're in your backyard grilling and celebrating with friends you're comfortable to be with. But that we just wanted to have the opportunity to recognize that our patriotic holiday, that we've weathered this event as Americans and as Fort Lauderdalians, or whatever we call ourselves, I guess, and that we didn't want to give up on the 4th of July. So that opportunity is still there. I do need to hear from the commission, though, that if you really think that this isn't the right year, then I need to know that, and I'll move
All right,
to
well,
in that direction.
why don't we survey the commission? So Commissioner Moritas, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I would like to have fireworks in the city of Fort Lauderdale on a smaller scale and encourage people to stay home and watch where they can.
Okay. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I just don't think that this is the right year for this. Although I would love to see the fireworks, especially now that you've added one at the Beach Community Center, which is great for a lot of folks in the north end of the beach area. I just don't think this is the right year for this. I think that even though we'll do an educational campaign and say, we're going to bring the fireworks to you, please stay at home. I know what's going to happen at Holiday Park and at the Beach Community Center and Mills Pond Park, and people are not going to stay at home and just watch it from home. So I think if we explain that, maybe you do some 4th of July Zoom thing for the whole city or whatever, but I don't know. And because I want to hear a little bit more detail on costs also. Are we obligated to any expenses that obviously now that we're canceling the beach one, are we getting full refunds on all of the fireworks and et cetera, et cetera?
So at this point, we probably would assemble some restocking type fee. But as far as I cannot tell you that I think that we all of a sudden are at that point where there's not, that we don't have any choice, and that we're at a point of no return, that we're going to lose the money one way or the other. I do believe if we make the decision that there would be less of an expense, I still think we probably have some commitment because we had a contract and goods were purchased on our behalf. But I do not believe, and I could work with the city attorney on this, I don't believe that we would have to make the full payment.
Because I would even look at what the contract says in terms of even partial payment. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said last time you're not aware of anyone in Broward County, any of the municipalities that are going forward. Has that changed at all?
I have not had any changes in that statement, no.
So we're talking about fireworks that wouldn't be just for our city, but everyone in the county who's not having fireworks also know that Fort Lauderdale will be the only ones that are having fireworks. Is that correct?
It's hard to say because cities are still making decisions, but you're probably, I do know that most of the cities in Broward County are probably not having fireworks, which some say, well, maybe that's why we should have fireworks. But anyway, you're correct in saying that most of the cities that I'm aware of are not having fireworks.
Right. I haven't heard of any that are, and I'm sure that they're all getting refunds as well. I mean, I can't imagine that vendors don't understand why municipalities would be canceling. In light of the current events. Anyway, I don't want to, belabor the point. I'm not comfortable with it this year for all of the reasons of the crowds, et cetera, et cetera. I think it will be very difficult for our first responders to control. And I think that the citizens would understand if we just skip this year. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner McKenzie, what are your thoughts?
I've been reluctant to doing it because I think how well we try to orchestrate it to move it forward and make it a stay-at-home event. I think we have witnessed here recently and throughout this COVID-19 that folks are not going to stay at home when they have an opportunity to walk up to a fence or drive down the street and get closer to the excitement. So I'm just not comfortable with it, and I'd rather not do it. But I would lean as far as to make this your call, Mayor, but I'd rather not see it. And I want to hear what you have to say at the end of this. to move forward. But I don't think the people are going to, especially now that everybody's out, moving about. They're going to be doing fireworks in their backyards, whether we like it or not. And I think if they get an opportunity to come to a venue, they're going to come out and at least try and come out.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Okay, Commissioner Sorensen, your thoughts?
So how many locations would we be looking at now?
We're looking at 4.
Has anyone done any type of sense of how much of the city is going to be able to view those 4 from their homes?
From the firework vendor, they have provided maps that have viewing areas based upon height of display and the number of viewers in that viewing area. Obviously, when you are closer into the downtown, when you're at the parking deck in downtown or at the Ocean Community Center, a beach community center, that those have to be lower in the sky and smaller because it's very congested. At Mills Pond and Holiday Park, you can go with a larger firework and you can get them up higher and get a better viewing audience. Probably all sites together. And this would be unscientific, but just seeing these search rings, it's probably 15, 20,000 people that would have the ability to very easily see them. And maybe more than that if you're just looking for.
Geographically, the way I understood it, I think at least 60, 70% of the geography of the city would be able to see it. So whoever would show up within the viewing radius, would be able to see it. So think in terms of those numbers, Commissioner, when you're trying to figure out, what percentage of the city would be within view of the fireworks.
So Mayor, you're saying 60 to 70% of the
geography of the city
would be able to view the fireworks without moving.
To go out on their balcony or to go out on their backyard right.
And the cost estimate, Chris, was it 100,000?
So with the way it breaks out, the easiest rule of thumb I can give you is it's $30,000 a location. It was $90,000 when we had 3 locations, and we added a 4th location. So right now, if we were to move forward, it would be about $120,000.
And the duration?
Between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on the location.
Concurrent or consecutive?
Do not know if that has been determined, but it would seem to me as though it would be concurrent would make sense.
Yeah, it would have to be concurrent.
I don't think it has to be concurrent. Why does it have
because you'd be out there 11 o'clock at night, right?
You typically want to start time as it goes up. It may not be
right. We don't be rushing around, going from one site to another. I think anyway, it would be concurrent.
Just asking. Okay, I'm fine with this.
Okay.
Hey, Ben.
Right. Did you want to say something else, Commissioner Moritas?
No,
Go Navy.
I was saying yay. I was happy for Ben. I think 70% of our city getting to see a smaller firework display. I don't know. I just think.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of considerations, and I think all of your points are well taken. I think
yes, all of them are.
We're at a very unusual moment in time in our world, not just in Fort Lauderdale, but everywhere in the country, where we're questioning what would be normal in other situations is now a new normal. So we're looking at trying to understand whether we should do something like this. So one reaction would be, well, we shouldn't be encouraging people to congregate in groups because of the spread of the virus. But at the same time, as I look at it, we're going to be outdoors, and if there is a gathering of people, even though we would try to discourage it, people would be in the open air, so they'd be less likely to risk the contagion of this, since it's going to be in the open air environment. Also, a lot of people are feeling very stir crazy, and something like this, as simple as this, makes people feel feel good about themselves, and getting a breath of fresh air and coming out and feeling good about who they are and their country, and and you know, it's a simple event. It takes 30 minutes, but I just think it makes people, you know, reclaim their life once again by able to say, oh, we have the 4th of July, because we're giving up so many other things. We're giving up festivals and parades and all these other things that we normally would have expected during these past few months. And 4th of July, and I'm thinking by the time 4th of July comes, we might even be in phase 2. So because that's where we're headed. So, you know, we'd be loosening up the restrictions on gatherings in public places and so forth. And so we'd probably be in the right environment in which to have an outdoor display like this. And finally, I think it was very clever to suggest having it spread out throughout the city, because it discourages cluster development, cluster groupings, and I think it was very smart to even approach it that way. So I commend you, Chris, for whoever came up with that. So, you know, I really would like to see 4th of July fireworks. You know, I'm not saying.
Can I add to it?
Was that Robert?
Can I add to it? Because
yeah, go ahead.
That's why I wanted to hear your point. And I'm okay moving forward, but I think the Mills Ponds location, which is in my district, but it's on the outer banks of it, if we could find like somewhere inward so we can kind of catch those contiguous neighborhoods between Lauderdale Manors, Dewar, so maybe Carter Park be that location.
Hey, you tell us, because it's not written in stone.
Yeah, so if we move it to Carter Park, it'll catch some of my district, and some of downtown could see it from the high rises.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Absolutely.
There'd be no problem with that. There'd be no. It's a nice open space, so would be a safe area in which to launch.
You know what? I move that we go forward with it, and
Okay.
you know, and just pray that it works out, and hopefully it'll lift the spirits of the folks in our town.
Okay. All right. So we have a consensus, except for the vice mayor. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Okay.
Next item.
Okay, so let's talk about Sunday. And I want to talk about and just give a report. There's some parts of Sunday that when I get to that part of the story, I'll talk a little bit about why we're unable to do a lot of detail talking about it at this point. But I think it's important that we address head on what happened on Sunday in Fort Lauderdale. We learned Sunday that a peaceful protest, was leaving the city of Lauderhill and coming to Fort Lauderdale. I want to very, very specifically put on the record and change the record that I've heard, that we reached out to the protest group when the city of Lauderhill said that they couldn't participate there anymore, and that we invited them to Fort Lauderdale. That is not a true statement. We were notified that the protest had moved to Huizenga Park, and we found that in internet social media post. So for those that would suggest that we opened up our doors and said, please come here, that was not the case. This protest left the city of Lauderhill on Sunday with notice that it was going to come to Huizenga Park. And we saw even some notifications at about 1:30 that afternoon. And by 3 o'clock, we had people assembling. I can tell you that from 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock, it was a very peaceful event. There was a lot of protesters in the city with our police department and the support of our motor units and others. We were able to assist the protesters as they walked their message through downtown Fort Lauderdale, came from Huizenga Park, went west on Broward Boulevard, protested for a while in front of our police building. No events there, no incidences there. And I can even tell you that the protest organizers at one point, were watching them on the cameras, were standing at the front doors of the police building and caused folks that may have had some tendency towards violence to turn away and walk back away from the building. The group itself then went back east on Broward Boulevard. I can tell you they left people behind in the front parking lot of the police building to clean up the trash that was left behind. And it was that type of an event, very respectful. Came back to Andrews Avenue, walked to the jail over the bridge. Were there for a little while and then came back to Huizenga Park. Some traveled down Los Olas Boulevard and made it to about 15th Avenue, but then ultimately returned to the park. There was a final rally, a final prayer, and then an order to disperse. And that was just around 6 o'clock. And so the events had unfolded. It was probably a couple minutes after 6 o'clock. It was clear that, and we were even hearing from members in the crowd that before dark, the tone of the protest was going to change. And in fact, it did. We had our police officers responding to 2 individual officer calls for assistance who were in their police vehicles surrounded by protesters who were around the vehicles and on top of them, and in fact shattered out the rear windshield of one of the vehicles. And we had to send in a field force at that point to do an officer extraction from those 2 vehicles because they were surrounded by protesters. And that was at the first moment that any sort of disbursement deployment of tear gas was used to separate the crowd. I want to say and address head on that we too have seen the cell phone video of one of our police officers with a questionable interaction with one of the protesters. As soon as we saw that, we immediately removed that officer from duty and from public service that day. And then subsequent to that have learned that the state attorney and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement would like to investigate that interaction, and first from a criminal perspective, and then obviously we will take it from an administrative perspective after the fact. That's why I don't want to do a lot of talking about that specific event, is because an outside agency at this point has chosen to investigate it. We're fully supportive of that. They asked if we wanted to be a part of that investigation. My preference is that we're not. And that way there's no, we can say with certainty at the end that it was independent and done by an outside organization. And then we will certainly follow their lead, and we'll do our administrative work after that's done. To the extent that there was an inappropriate interaction, we will take action as an organization. And I want the public to hear that I know Chief Maglione stands for a very sound, ethical, and an appropriate police department that uses the right force in the right circumstances, and we don't condone otherwise. So that's a little bit about that event. We were joined by field forces from all over Broward County, and I want to thank those organizations that came to our assist in Fort Lauderdale, the Broward Sheriff's Office as well, and we were able to effectively disperse the protest and issue the dispersal order somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock that night. The mayor did implement a curfew. The purpose of a curfew is to try to protect people from those that may not have the best of intentions, and to get people into safe shelter. That was a 72-hour curfew, and it continues to exist for tonight, and then will expire before it would come into effect tomorrow. So it would expire before 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So essentially this would be the last night that it would kick in at 9 p.m. and go until 6 o'clock in the morning. I can tell you, subsequent to our curfew order and declaration of emergency locally, Ms. Henry with Broward County issued a similar curfew order. Hers at this point goes for a full 7 days, so it will expire on Monday of next week. So if we take no action as a city tonight, the county's curfew likely will be overarching of us in the city, as well as the other 30 cities, if there's a total of 31 in Broward County. So I understand Bertha is looking at that every morning, and based upon intelligence received, making a determination whether or not it stays in effect or she lifts it. She did indicate earlier today that she intended on having it stay in effect tonight. So ours being in effect coterminous with hers really is just one's layered on the other. If for some reason she should withdraw hers tomorrow, then we would be without one tomorrow night. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I can tell you our threat response unit within our police department is very engaged in identifying what may be a threat to Fort Lauderdale before it gets here, and we certainly act upon credible intelligence as well, and have the past 3 days in smaller events that we think that we've been able to get ahead of. And put police in the right areas so that we didn't end up with another clash with any type of protester. Certainly we welcome the peaceful free speech of anybody who wants to speak in Fort Lauderdale. We just don't welcome those that seek to do harm or violence in our community. The protesters that ended up after the more peaceful protest, they showed up with firecrackers and sticks and rocks and and milk, which is a known deterrent or known thing that you can use to dull down the effects of tear gas. So they didn't come looking for a peaceful event, and anybody who comes with those types of weapons in their pockets came looking for an altercation with law enforcement. We've seen it around the nation. This isn't specific to Fort Lauderdale. Unfortunately, it's a trend we're seeing across the United States and with some regularity. So we continue to watch the intelligence, and if we need to ready ourselves again for another event, then we stand ready to do that. I can tell you we will be a little bit more certain with the next event that if there's any indication that it would turn violent, that we will seek to not allow it to come to our city, and we'll work with the city attorney's office in finding a way to make a recommendation that we say no. But that's where we are with our response from Sunday. I can tell you our police force came under pretty solid attack for several hours to look at their helmets and their face shields and the shields that they had in their hands. They were being pelted by chunks of concrete and bottles and sticks of dynamite and other things were being thrown at them. So I do want to say that I don't want one event to be I don't want one event to tarnish the tremendously capable response, professional response of our police force, but they did a fantastic job under the circumstances of being in really harm's way for many hours that night. And we came through it without any injuries, a little bit of property damage that was able to be fixed and boarded up. But that's an update that I have. I've got plenty of capable staff on the call, on the meeting, and I'll be happy to take any questions from the commission.
Okay. Commissioner Moritas, do you have any thoughts or any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris, and all of our police. I mean, it was obviously a horrible event. I appreciate their response and everything they've done. And I know this week they're still, anticipating the possibility of more. Chris, did you give a little bit more input? Have we seen? I know you talked about some intel you're getting. Have we heard about any more protests coming to at least Fort Lauderdale or Broward County in general over the next week?
Every day there's new information out there, and some of it, I got one today about a peaceful protest that it's not in Fort Lauderdale, but that is planned for Friday in the city of Hollywood at Griffin and 441. And so, we get information ahead of time, and then sometimes we learn information ahead of time because we're quite active also in those social media places where we can see events being planned. I rely heavily upon Chief Maglione's threat response unit. They're a very good unit in our police department, and they're very talented at figuring these things out before they end up here. I don't want to give away all of our secrets and how we learn of information or how we learn of what's going to happen, but I can tell you his team is well connected, and we don't want to react for the sake of reacting, but we do want to react when we have information that suggests that there may be something coming to Fort Lauderdale. I don't have anything tonight that I can sit and tell you that we have intelligence that says that we're back on the list for a certain day.
Sure.
We just stay fluid with this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as information finds us, then we certainly structure our response accordingly.
And so obviously tonight, there's nothing going on around us, around City Hall right now or anything. It's 7:30. Everything's kind of quiet.
I'm not aware of anything. I saw a bunch of police cars out the window go down Broward Boulevard. So before I confirm that, I probably should check. But I haven't, nobody's, sent me anything that says that there's anything going on tonight.
There's anything going on. And the last thing, I know my district was concerned yesterday with the Galleria Mall. Do we feel pretty good? I don't believe anything happened. We feel pretty good moving forward. We haven't really heard much about the mall.
Malls nationwide seem to be an attraction. Yes, Galleria has been named a couple of times. We think that there was probably an event on Saturday that was planned at Galleria Mall. We were able to get information about it early on and obviously sent resources over there. The only reason we think that there was probably something that went on is it went on social media where we saw a media post that said, too many cops at Galleria Mall, go to Lauderhill instead, protest at 6. And in order to put that on the social media, somebody would have to have been there looking to have participated in something. So,
That's interesting.
you know,
Okay, so
we when we get that information and Galleria, people have driven by it the past couple of days. You know, you can't hide police cars, and in fact, they kind of stand out. And there's been police cars and police horses and things at Galleria Mall. That's not just been because we've wanted to be at those corners of the mall. That's because that there has been, you know, at least rumor that that malls are at a risk, and that's happened in all of the Tri-County area of South Florida. There was a mall issue in Palm Beach County, I believe, yesterday. Sawgrass I saw closed early at one point this week. So Galleria is an attractive, high-profile shopping mall, and so we watch it and the information we can receive about it closely.
okay, well, I'm thankful that that police activity did deter the group, and they did not come. So that's good to know. You know, gosh, it's horrible that our businesses are trying desperately to reopen even at 50% capacity, and now they have to shut down again, and our restaurants at 9 o'clock. But thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. First, Chris, I did hear today the sheriff at the county commission meeting said he just recommended one more night, meaning tonight. So maybe that will coincide with ours, but that was his recommendation today to the county. Just wanted to mention that.
I heard that.
Excuse me?
Yes, I heard that as well. Yes, we'll see if that works. Hopefully it does.
Okay, great. Thank you. I too want to echo some of the sentiments that have been made before. For all of us that love Fort Lauderdale so much, that was heart-wrenching on Sunday. And we do have to recognize the pain and the hurt that's out there. And at the same time, we have to really appreciate all of the peaceful protesters that were not just in our city, but everywhere else. And it is a shame that a small number of people can cause so much trouble. And kudos to our police department for showing amazing restraint throughout those. I guess it was at least 6 hours from start to finish. But again, just heartbreaking to see that happen and to happen to our businesses, as Commissioner Moritas said, that have been struggling just to come back now, and then this on top of everything else. I wanted to just also mention, Chris, I don't know if you've had any conversations with folks from Lauderhill. I mean, that was a city event, and then all of a sudden they just decided, oh, we're not going to have it, and everyone goes to go to Fort Lauderdale now, which I found kind of strange from a city to do that, considering they really were a sponsor of the event. And then I was a little distressed to see some elected officials on social media sort of blame our problems at the end of the event on that one police event. So where there was maybe some obviously bad action in terms of treating a woman that was on the ground, but I don't think that was the beginning of the problem. And yet that was being blamed as the reason for the problems. And I don't know if you had a chance to talk to those people in other cities, elected officials, but I think that's important going forward too, that we have that kind of dialogue so that everyone is on the same page with the timeline of how those events actually happen. So I'm hoping you're able to have those kinds of conversations.
Vice Mayor, I think we're working on that timeline, and that will be, we need to understand the timeline and what resulted at what point in time. So it's a point well taken, and I think we're working on that right now.
Great, that'll be very helpful because a lot of people were jumping to conclusions that I think we need to just set the record straight. Thank you for that. So Chris, I wanted to just bring up the discussion of communication with the city commission during a crisis like this. And again, I understand that this is a difficult time. We all understand the pressure you're under and staff's under. But from my perspective as an elected official, I just want to throw this out, see how my colleagues feel. I found myself getting all of the information on that day from either switching back and forth from 4 television stations, or all of the incredible number of texts that I was getting from constituents and folks along the way, and just what they had witnessed on the ground, either because they lived right there or they have a business right there. That's how I was getting my information. And if I could just suggest that when we have emergency situations like this, or a crisis, that we as elected officials get some sort of a briefing all at the same time, that we know what's happening, that we can just stay in real time with what's happening. And then I will mention, I saw on television that the mayor was having a press conference at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't hear that from my own city, but then I couldn't even find it on Facebook. If I wanted to watch it, it was not there. So I don't know, those to me are just disconnects for us as a commission, where we really should have that information and we should all be privy to it at the same time. In conjunction with that, then I heard after the fact that there was a Facebook Live session the next day with our police department, Board of Education member Osgood, our mayor. They were having a whole discussion of the whole event. I didn't know about it until after the event. I went back through my emails. I did not see anything from our communications in our city. I asked my staff, no one saw anything. So these are things that I just think we need to tighten up. I also had people say to me, why is the National Guard on Las Olas Boulevard? People felt different ways about that, mostly positive about it, but some people had the questions about it. But we did not get an email or, gee, we're calling in the National Guard now, and as of X time, this is going to happen on Las Olas Boulevard. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. I just think we need to have a better line of cohesive, coherent communication for all of us in real time, and especially when there are events. For instance, if our mayor is going to be having a press conference or joining the police and Board of Education members and other people. So that's how I felt about Sunday. It was very tough to keep up with what was happening every step of the way. Thank you.
I think your point is well taken. I can tell you though, Steve, that events were happening so rapidly. Decisions were made very last minute. For example, that press conference was assembled within 30 minutes. But you're right. I think everybody should be kept apprised of things as they're happening, especially things that are like the National Guard and so forth. The decision to bring the National Guard in came as a result of the fear that the police department had that they wouldn't have enough personnel to cover the businesses that were now exposed, especially those with broken windows and things like that. I went and walked Las Olas today. I don't know if any of you all had a chance to, but I went to many of the businesses and I asked them what their reaction was to the National Guard, and they were upset that we let them go. They wish they would stay there, but the reality is that we're back to normal. Our police department is now able to cover all the areas that we feel would have been at risk. And but your point is well taken, and we don't have these things happen every day, thank God. So we have that lesson to learn going forward. So, but thank you.
No, and I appreciate it. And remember also that a lot of this comes from, I want to be prepared when people are calling me and emailing me and texting me and asking me questions. I want to have accurate information. So it's just important. I'm not disagreeing with you on anything in terms of the need for the National Guard, the need for you to have a press conference, the need, but we have thousands of people working on staff. I can't imagine that someone just can't put a paragraph together and hit the send button to 4 people. So that's all I'm saying, so that we can have kind of information. That's all.
Okay, your point is well taken. Commissioner McKenzie.
I don't have a comment just yet. I'm gonna make one though, not just yet.
Okay.
Before we finish, if you don't mind.
No problem. Commissioner Sorensen.
Yep. Thanks, Mayor.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. So I just think it was, gut wrenching, obviously, watching what happened to George Floyd. And so a couple things is one, I commend Chief Maglione, Chris, city attorney, the whole fire rescue, just everyone who I think handled incredibly tough situation, incredibly gut-wrenching time in our nation very well, with the exception of one officer, I think, making some very bad decisions. I think it was just amazing response and working to allow people to express, their First Amendment right. And I think that went so well until we started moving into the evening, and then it was just horrible. I was out, I went out on Las Olas that night because a bunch of businesses had been, people had thrown rocks through their windows. And that is just completely unacceptable. And, with the business owners there, late at night, they were just incredibly gracious and wanting to rebuild and be fixed and so forth. So I just commend everyone that's been part of this, horrible time that we've been going through on this. And I had a couple of specific questions, Chris, for you and Chief Maglione around this. And it's just to kind of understand as a police department and policy wise, kind of how we're operating. So one, this Minneapolis police officer, the Minneapolis Police Department is saying there were 18 complaints, internal affairs complaints against this officer, which to me just seems like a huge number. And so that's the first question, is I'd just like to get a little bit of clarity around how do we process complaints, and at what point is the tipping point to say, hey, there have been enough internal affairs complaints against this person that we found that are valid, that they're no longer a good fit for our police department. So that's the first question.
So I think it's probably appropriate to, if you're going to ask a specific question like that about the department, let me turn that over to the chief and let him talk about his department. So Chief Maglione.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, but you're gonna have to speak up just a little bit.
Okay, good evening, everybody, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for the comments about the police department's performance, and I do agree that one 10-second incident in a more than 6-hour operation shouldn't be reflective of the entire operation. It shouldn't be reflective of the good intent of the folks that were there demonstrating as well. There was probably about 1,500 people there, and after it was officially over is when the problems, and I'm going to say they were pre-planned problems that we had information on, started. There was they broke up into 3 groups. There was a few hundred left in the park. A group went east on Las Olas and a group went north. And yes, what set this off was an officer was attacked in her police car. She got on the radio screaming for help. She'd been surrounded. We had to do an officer rescue. Shortly thereafter, another officer, a sergeant, was attacked in her car. And among all that is when the officer shoved the woman that we all saw on TV. When it comes to our policy, I'll tell you right now, we have an absolute prohibition on any tactic or maneuver that restricts airflow or breathing in any way. No chokeholds are allowed, and any maneuver or tactic that restricts breathing or airflow is strictly prohibited. And we've put in our policy, and it's been there for ages, that that's equivalent to a use of deadly force. So if you're going to use that, it's on the burden of proof is on the officer to explain that that was used to protect their lives or the lives of someone else. So for lack of a better term, it's equivalent to shooting somebody. If you're going to use something that restricts someone's breathing, you better be justified in taking somebody's life.
And Chief, that includes this knee to neck maneuver that the Minneapolis officer was using?
That's not even a tactic we'd even use, but for example, chokeholds or anything that restricts breathing. Now, you do have your carotid arteries that are along the side of your neck that restricts blood flow, not breathing. And chokeholds, they're actually taught to restrict those areas. And we don't even allow that because of the proximity to your airway. And we don't want someone to get that hold on improperly and restrict someone's breathing when they're trying to restrict blood flow. Throughout our policy, we have mention of being aware of things like positional asphyxia. So for example, if you handcuff someone and lay them on their stomach, and several factors can come into play: pre-existing medical conditions, intoxicants, obesity. There's many things that if somebody's handcuffed and laying on their stomach, that there's a condition that can occur called positional asphyxia. And we have that even mentioned throughout our policy. So once we have somebody secured, that we return them to a seated position. So our policy strictly prohibits it and equates it to deadly force. Now, obviously, we try to learn from other people's interactions and their negative ones, especially. So as soon as this happened up in Minneapolis, we made sure that we created a training program, including an exam at the end of it that was immediately distributed to every police officer, and we gave them 5 days to complete it. Obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're having to do a lot of things through what's called Power DMS, which is our training module where officers have to log in and do a certain amount of training, and there's a certain amount of time spent on it and a quiz at the end that they have to pass. And we put that out concerning specifically uses of force and restrictions to breathing and airflow, and they had 5 days to complete it. I think the deadline was last night or tonight.
Great, Chief. And then give me a little bit of perspective around this, the number of kind of disciplinary actions taken against an officer. What's the tipping point, or how is that? I know each is different, but how is that evaluated or assessed?
Correct. And it depends what it is. I mean, obviously there's different severities of misconduct. I mean, there's some things that could be, for lack of a better word, a job bender on the first offense, and other that follow a progressive discipline trail, such as discourtesy or a service type issue, inadequate police service. Obviously there's a progressive discipline trail that, you know, it would take you several sustained investigations to get up to the point of termination. I mean, even including car accidents, preventable car accidents. There are some, such as certain force issues, anything that involves your integrity, such as dishonesty, that can be a job bender on the very first offense.
And job bender meaning job ender? Is that?
As in termination, yes, sir.
Termination, okay, great.
This particular officer has been with us since 2016. He was with FHP prior to that. And since he's been hired here, he's had no internal affairs investigations at all. We also have use of force reviews. Anytime any officer uses force, that's in addition to empty-handed handcuffing technique, use of force review is done. So anything from leg sweeping to hands, feet, fists, impact weapons, tasers, spray, all the way up to deadly force. We do a force review, whether or not a complaint is generated, for one, to see if we need to generate a complaint on our own, and two, to ensure that the officer's actions were within department policy. We have an early alert system in our internal affairs management program in the software, that a certain number of uses of force triggers an alert, so we can review their overall. So if it's nothing, any one particular incident that we said, hey, we need to look at this closer, a certain number of uses of force will also trigger an alert that says, you need to look at this because this officer's exceeded that number of uses of force. And I believe that is 2 a month. And that sounds like a lot, but remember, it's even just putting someone on the ground and handcuffing someone, or having to use pepper spray or anything. So 2 times a month. There are certain exceptions for certain units. For example, our SROs, our school resource officers, we get an alert every time that they use any type of force, because it's in the school, because it may be between an officer and a student. We just want to know and make sure that we do a closer review when it's a potentially an officer and a student.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Chris and Mayor. Those are my questions for the
Okay,
moment.
great, thank you. Back to you, Commissioner McKenzie.
I really don't have any comments, but Mr. Sorensen raised some good questions, and I'll probably just follow up on some of those. And some of the narratives that we use here today, like horrible event, I echo what the horrible event was. But then the manager and the police chief talked about all the positives of the organizers until these agitators, as the mayor used in his press conference, created the atmosphere that they were going to create. And we dismissed, in my opinion, the behavior of this officer when he shoved the young lady kneeling. And from what I have seen and what the rest of the world has seen, it was obvious, but yet still the manager would use words like questionable. So I would hate to just try to downplay what happened, but I agree with you all that it was a positive intent. And prior to the event happening, a couple nights before or a night before, I was privy to a few conversations simply because I had another group that wanted to organize and do a march. And typically I would not invite a group into march or participate unless I have vetted the organizer and the hearts and minds of those folks and what their intents are. I know everyone says they want to do this, they want to do that, and I know that this group that participated downtown have done events over the years here, and I've never been able to sit down and get the answers I need answered from that group, so I don't feel comfortable participating. Now, I did observe from afar, from across the street until I decided to go back home. But when Lauderdale witnessed what was going on in Miami, their city, their mayor, their commissioners, their city manager, their police chief made a call to cancel this event in their city because of some of the intel they were gathering about who was going to participate, and seeing what happened in Miami, didn't think they could facilitate it. We also were engaged with the social media and things of that nature, knowing what was happening in Miami. And in my conversations, I cautioned us from allowing this. And I basically did that as a result of what I saw on television in Miami, what I've been seeing around the world, and then Lauderdale shutting down. I had to fear that, it would come to us, and I was told that we couldn't do that. We couldn't shut it down. And when we had our conversations, and I always respect my conversations with our police department because we have a good relationship, and if that was their call, that's your call, and I support them. However, you all also mentioned that we had to call in the National Guard. If we felt that we could handle this, why was there a need to call the National Guard? And I know you mentioned earlier, Chris, that you thank the other agencies for coming in, but if we knew that we could facilitate it from the inception, did those other agencies volunteer, or did we call for help once we realized that we could not facilitate the number of people in those crowds? And that's a question, so I'll let somebody answer that.
Yeah, so I'll turn that over to the chief and let him answer. There's a process by which we would call for resources, and in fact, others in Broward would call for us. So go ahead, Chief.
So my question is, did they volunteer, or did we call for help when we saw that we couldn't handle the crowd?
First thing I'll address is the National Guard. We had our full complement of police officers there, and to be honest with you, Lauderhill was trying to get them to not come there for a few days. And what they ultimately did was put those 3-foot water barricades up over, I would assume estimate about a 10-acre parking lot, which is where they were going to have it at the northeast corner of Sunrise Boulevard and 441. I went by there and there was some water barricades, those plastic ones like we have on the beach, and a couple signs just crudely painted, spray painted that said event postponed. So if I was the conspiracy theorist in me says they never planned on going there, because at 1:30 we found out they changed their plan to go from Lauderhill to Heisinger Park.
1:30. What day? 1:30. Which Sunday or Saturday?
The day of the protest. We found out they switched it to holiday to Heisinger Park. They already had a flyer that went out. So I'm not so sure that wasn't just to throw us off anyway. But when we thought it was going to be in Lauderhill, Chief Stanley and the city of Lauderhill already put the county-wide response basically on standby that they may need us. You know, a field force, it takes a lot of people, and especially if you want to move crowds and you have to have several lines and different people have different assignments. And yeah, it takes the whole county on occasion, especially when we had to cover from basically at one point from Las Olas all the way south to the river to get folks to move west. And we wanted them to go north and west because we figured most of them had their cars parked in those parking garages or came from that direction. We didn't want to push them into the water or push them further south or east away from where the logical place to have their vehicles would be in the parking garages. So it took a lot of people. And as soon as we saw that we needed field force more than just what our original intent was give them their space. They have something to say, something that we actually agree with. All the good cops definitely think that this needs to play out in a courtroom for those cops up in Minneapolis. I've already admonished what those police officers did to my department and to anybody that will listen. And I absolutely agree that they should be arrested. And that's where they need to have their process take place, is in a courtroom for ending Mr. Floyd's life. With that being said, when it transferred to Fort Lauderdale, when we saw it was going to field force mode and was no longer going to be peaceful and just traffic direction and officers in just a plain old patrol uniform, keeping them safe, like we did at the protest earlier that day, wasn't going to work. We asked for other officers from other agencies to come in, and I think every municipality other than one or two, we're already ready, and they're coming. As we're ready to go to Sunrise, Coral Springs, Parkland, Davie, there's events planned and occurring in all of those cities in the next few days, and we'll also assist. When it came to the National Guard, that was my request or my suggestion, and it was only to protect the businesses that had been breached on Las Olas. Our officers were very busy. Some of them had been there since 7 in the morning, and now we were approaching 11 o'clock at night, midnight. They were fatigued. We had to relieve some people and let them go home. And what I wanted to do was make sure that those businesses were protected until the owners could come in and get them secured, replace windows or board them up, because we didn't want to just leave their businesses unattended, but we didn't have the staffing to just stand outside of stores. Really, there was some graffiti and some broken glass where businesses were compromised, and we did encounter a few people inside the businesses, but I haven't heard of any major property loss. There was no fire, there was no arson, and the National Guard standing there and protecting that property, I think, helped us throughout the night into today until the business owners could secure it. But it wasn't, the National Guard wasn't there to assist in the operation. They were there to assist in protecting the property after the fact.
So when did you make the call to the National Guard, and how quickly was their response? And I'll go back to the Lauderhill incident because I want to speak to that, and then I'm gonna go back to Commissioner Thornton's original questions. I just want you to elaborate on something for me.
Right, the National, I'm trying to remember, and it's just a guess. I could be wrong. It will be time stamped in our log that our dispatchers in our crime center was keeping track of everything.
Roughly, it's not a test, just roughly.
My guess would be I first asked around 10 o'clock at night. Obviously they're in Miramar, and I think probably got there around 11 or 11:30.
Fair enough. That's good. That's a good answer. But going back to Lauderhill canceling, when I got wind of it, I was speaking with the officials over there the night before, and I spoke to your department, and they were well aware that they were coming to our city, and that's when we started discussing whether or not we should cancel it. And the basic answer was that we couldn't make that call, because I don't want to divulge too much of that. That you guys couldn't make that call. And yes, you're right. In the past, even with Black Lives Matter, I remember many occasions where we provided a platform for them to protest, demonstrate, like we do other groups that want to organize, and that's fine. But here, knowing in the fear of other cities and the fear of rioting throughout the other states is why I raised the question, is why we had an extensive conversation with your department in fear of not the peaceful protesters, as you mentioned, the peaceful protesters, as the city manager mentioned, is those that latched on and waited to do these type of activities. And I cautioned against it.
I had
And
communications with Chief Stanley from Lauderhill, and I'm just
talking about me. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about me being with the shot caller at City Hall in Lauderhill when they actually called me to say, "Hey, look, we want to tell you we're canceling this." And even before that, I had a march being vetted to take place at 2:00 in the city of Fort Lauderdale on the Sistrunk corridor. So that's why I was calling back and forth to give you guys heads up about this group, see if you knew anything, in which you all had been in contact, because this young lady contacted you all for your help. So hold on. And in that, I didn't want this other group to get attached to my group, so I paid very close attention to the details, along with your command staff, in trying to come up with something that would protect the safety of the city of Fort Lauderdale, not just my district, city of Fort Lauderdale. And when I did not feel good about what was going to happen downtown, because I think initially they were coming downtown to the government center days before that. And then when they heard Lauderhill was doing an organized event, the Black Lives Matter attached themselves to that. But Lauderhill was going to allow it until what they witnessed Saturday night in Miami, and they canceled it. They made a call. We didn't make a call. Well, we made a call too, and our call was to try to facilitate it. And I'm okay with that. Wasn't my call. I'm okay with it. But the other group, and I'll talk about that during my commission report, did participate in our city, and I want to share that in a more positive light. But going back to the questions of that was asked earlier, and the reason why I'm asking is because we dismissed this incident with this officer, in which I'm ashamed of, in which I know you don't condone it. I don't condone it, but the outcome of it I will be following, and I'm going to pay very close attention to it, because I have a very serious responsibility to the citizens of Fort Lauderdale, and in particular my constituents. I understand this officer was a District 3 officer. He covered my District 2 policing, District 3, in which is my district. But and one of the things that you all threw out there was the other two officers whose cars were surrounded, is why this officer reacted in such a manner. So, and I'm not trying to take sides either way, but the question is, we have body cameras, right? So in the timeline that Chris spoke about putting together, and I'm waiting for all the information before I make a decision. And but we will have cameras from those two events that took place in those officers' cars that, in communications to me afterwards, it indicated to me that it validates this officer's behavior, which I don't agree with. In your first press conference, you kind of alluded to that. The second one, the last one you did, it was great. I think you hit it right on the head. I think where we're going with the investigation, state attorneys, FDLE, and all the things that we normally do in protocol, which I've got a great understanding over the years. I got 6 years of this, and we've had some serious incidents that we navigated through. Shootings, racist texting, and a number of other things. So I know the processes, but the public don't always know that. And I'm willing to be patient to wait, but I do want to speak for the record that I do not condone the behavior of the officer. And Commissioner Sorensen asked you the question about a disciplinary action, and you alluded to the fact that there's been no IA or internal affairs investigations. Maybe this office has done something prior to that doesn't rise to that level. Are there any other disciplinary things that he might have gone through here, since he's been here since 2016, and at his previous agency, which you probably don't know, but I want to know these things because people don't just wake up and do these type of things one day. So there has to be a pattern somewhere, in my opinion, and I want to know his track record or report card. That's what I would like to know, and I don't know if you can speak to that because you had the information that nothing rose to the level of IA, and so you obviously have to know if something else was going on with this officer since his tenure here with us. That's the answer. I want to know if you have that now. If not, we'll revisit it, and we're going to revisit it publicly because I'm getting the calls, and I'm probably getting more flack in reference to that than everything else. I do not condone destruction of property or any of those events that happen after the peaceful peace. So, but that disciplinary action, not IA, his track record in the district now, from 16 to now, do you have anything to speak to that tonight?
Yes, and we can pull his full history. Unless you have sustained administrative investigations, you don't get discipline. That's the way discipline is handed out. So anything above a written counseling, so you could get a verbal counseling or a written counseling, but anything.
Does he have a verbal counseling?
Say again?
Does he have any verbal counseling or written counseling in any subject areas? Does he has he had to go to any trainings? I mean, I just want to know more about this individual because he's in my district. I don't know him, and I know you made a personnel change in my district, and a lot of people I don't know anymore. I'm getting to know some of the folks, and this is not to take away from the folks that are stepping up day in and day out in my district. I'm not going to do anything to wedge that. I want to keep building the momentum, and I want more on his report card. I'm sure there's more there. You probably don't have it now, because what really makes me ask this question is that during all this going on, everyone was searching for this guy's name. And I want to say even you too, but that's common if you're policing or managing a large number of people, but everyone was searching for his name, including myself. If you asked me this before you did the shift change or the personnel change like this, I probably could have named almost every officer in my district, but I'm learning now as we move forward. So that is important to me. And then number 3, and this will satisfy me for tonight. In my opinion, something great happened that night. Greater in the people, the men and women that you're in charge of and you manage day in and day out. There was a young female officer, Krista Smith, that when this officer did his dishonorable act, in my opinion, she diffused that situation. And a lot of people think that that's the moment when we gave those agitators an en route to do what they did. But you say and others say that it was the other two incidents with the cops being surrounded in the cars, and I care about those cops too. But what Crystal Smith did, to me, is an example of what men and women should do when they wear that badge and they take that oath to protect and serve. The other officers did not demonstrate that to me. And these are two officers that work in my district. One who's probably been there more than 2016, can handle any type of crowd, diversity included. The other one obviously can't handle it because what I saw and what I see as I keep rewinding the tape is where he was. There were other officers, Monica and a few others that I know by name. You know, I know a lot of the officers. None of them reacted the way he reacted. And I don't want to go too much into detail because of the investigations, but I'm watching, I'm concerned. I'm not trying to pit one against the other, but I saw one great example. And I even thought I saw a bottle hit Crystal in the back of the head. Yet and still, she did everything she could to diffuse, keep peace, because we were dealing with an already excited crowd who wanted to demonstrate and wanted to pull us out of our comfort zone to have that one moment to do those things. And so I wanted to allude to that tonight because of the public comments. And I do think it was a peaceful march. And I do think the agitators got the best of it because no one's playing the peace card. No one's playing the good things. No one's playing the night before when I was talking to your officers. No one's playing that. They're only playing that one moment, that one dishonorable act, that one coward act of this officer. And I can crown it any way I want to because that's what I saw. That's what I felt because I have a great relationship with my police department. I think now I got to defend this cloud of this one person's reaction and act. But then on the other hand, I could turn the other cheek and I could be proud of what Crystal Smith did that night. So I do want more answers and more information as it evolves, but I do think we need to keep doing what you and the mayor both did in your latest press conferences when you explained the processes of what you have to go through. I'm not the chief, but if I was the chief, this guy would not be working for us anymore. But that's a call that you and the manager made, and I'm looking for the final result on this, and I will be watching and following. And I'll give the good story during my commission report.
And I agree with you. And I actually made contact with Officer Smith right after I heard about it and told her how proud I was of her. And what's interesting, a couple days earlier, after the incident happened with Mr. Floyd up in Minneapolis, I put something out to the entire department about that incident, my feelings of that incident, basically how Mr. Floyd should be alive. And we don't employ the kind of cowards here that would stand around and watch somebody else end a man's life and not take action to intervene. And I said, and if you won't do it to save someone's life, then do it to save your brother or sister officer's career. And you're right, that's exactly what Officer Smith did. In fact, she didn't do it after that incident that happened with the woman that was pushed. And without getting into too much detail, back up a little bit, and I feel she did it to save her fellow officer because she saw an incident, an interaction that wasn't going positively, and that's when she went in and said, hey, let's get out of here. And that happened on the way out. So to be honest with you, I think she was doing something to actually look out for her officer as well. She saw it wasn't an interaction, so she went up to the officer and tried to remove him from that situation. And unfortunately, that happened as she was escorting him away from the other situation. So I think she was looking out for her fellow officer as well. And I think that's important.
I think that's what I'm saying. I don't need to be paraphrased. I think she diffused the situation, and I think it's a great analogy what you just said because his actions put other officers' lives in danger. That's what I saw. And that's what I'll be following as we move forward. And I know there's three sides of this thing, you know, and I hope to get all three sides.
And I can assure you, we took the maximum amount of official action that we can possibly take, and that's remove them from duty, leave them from duty. There's different rules in different states and different things that cover it. So, you know, you hear about in other states where like that happened and they terminate someone the next day. We don't even have that ability, so we can't even consider.
We've done that in the past. We did it with the racist Texan. We fired those guys right away, and then we let them fight. Yes, we did. We don't want to argue this publicly.
Okay.
And we can pull it back up and we can bring it back. But we did. And we got on television, Jack Tyler, myself, and the chief, city manager, and we made a call. Sometimes you can make a call. You made your call. You got to stand by it. You got to live with it. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying these other agencies around the world are making calls in situations that are questionable, as the city manager said, or we have to see what happened, statement that was made. But sometimes the obvious can be dealt with, and I can deal with whatever type of pushback I'm going to get with this because you know me, I've been right there with the police day one, and I continue to be right there, but I'm going to call a spade when I see a spade, but we will get to that as this plays out based on how you and the manager decided to reprimand this particular officer. So I don't want to keep belaboring this. We can end it now, and we'll come back when the evidence is in.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you, Chief.
Mayor, I have one question for the chief.
Wait a second.
No problem.
All right. So just to give you all a time frame, you know, we have a 9 o'clock curfew. I'd like to be able to end this meeting before 9 o'clock. So just keep that in mind. But no, I think that the discussion that the chief and the commissioner had was really instructive and very important for our community to listen to. And I appreciated what was being said tonight. Obviously, we have, as a community, a lot more to talk about. I hope that all of us would reach out to each of our constituents and folks that we know as we move forward and try to pick up on the message that the demonstration started, that dialogue, because it's, you know, we have a lot to learn and we have a lot to do. And but I think we need to move on. One last thing then, Vice Mayor, and then we need to move on.
No, I've got something too, and we're going to take time with this. I'd really like to. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, have you had any discussion with Chris and maybe even Hal Barnes and neighborhood support? I'm wondering going forward how we do have a discussion community-wide, how we let people, you know, get together, how we bring the community together, how we do build trust and moving forward as a community. I would hope that you could have those conversations with Chris and maybe Hal, and I'd like to see those kinds of forums where we can let folks express themselves and figure out how we move forward together as a community. I think that's really important going forward, and we have to have those kinds of forums and those kinds of meetings.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor, no one's preventing you from doing that, as you know.
No, Mayor, I'm talking to the chief now. I understand. I don't, it's not about me or District 2, but I think this is a citywide issue. It's not about any particular district. I think though that it shouldn't come from me. I think that it needs to come from the chief and our city manager and neighborhood support, and it's a citywide effort. Yeah, I know I could do it, but I just see it as a citywide issue, not a District 2 issue or just one commissioner issue. That's all.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we do a great job of community engagement. Not only do we attend everything we're invited to, we proactively do a lot of things. We actually have a whole team of officers called the Community Engagement Team, and we even have a dog. We visit elderly homes, we visit schools, we do reading programs, as you know, coffee with a cop, fish fries in the parks, basketball games with our little thrown together FLPD team against the high school teams or the middle school or the YMCA. I think that the community engagement is through the roof, and we're open to more. But I think the police are viewed as humans now, not just uniforms. And Commissioner McKenzie's right. Every year, you know, in the collective bargaining agreement, they get to participate in shift pick, and the patrol officers all pick where they want to work and what shift based on their seniority. So there are significant changes end of January, beginning of February every year. And yes, everybody's got to get to know each other again, other than specialty units. And some folks choose to stay in the same district all the time. Others move around a little bit. But we did have some new officers in the commissioner's district, as well as we have a lot of young officers. I mean, we have like 40 vacancies. So, and plus retirements, there's 65, 70 new officers on the street in the last couple of years. So I have to get to know them too. Like the commissioner said, I didn't recognize the officer from the video. I was asking, who is that? I don't even recognize him from the video. And it probably took about 10, 15 minutes till someone got me a name. You know, the video wasn't beautiful, and we had almost 500 or more officers out there. But yeah.
So this was your hire, right? He came in 2016. Is this your hire?
No, he was Chief Adderley's hire.
Okay.
He started in October of 16, and he was a certified officer from Florida Highway Patrol. I started January 1st of 17. So he'd been there.
That's my understanding of where some of his disciplinary actions started. And that's why I asked the question. So I needed information, and that's why I didn't want you really to talk on record and say you know he didn't have any disciplinary actions. I believe that to be wrong, but I'll wait for the facts to come out again. And I think he has some type of disciplinary actions here on our streets too. So I need you to get that to me. And I don't have to disclose it after, but I need to know. I already know, and I think you need to understand and how sensitive this is moving forward, and to help the vice mayor. It wasn't so much about the basketball games or what we do at Carter Park with Night Out on Crime. It's not the reading program. It's not the killers in the classroom. He's talking about community forums. Now, we used to do a lot of community forums where we had police in the community in my district, and we still do that. Initiative I take, and we keep it real. We talk about the real life situations that we see here in and day out, and none of you probably won't ever see what I witnessed to see in my district. That's not a negative thing, but it's a perspective of what we're seeing globally now with this, with the George Floyd situation. People are expressing what they have lived and felt all their lives. And I've given my speech to your officers day in and day out about the number of times I've been pulled over since I've been on this earth, and it's only because of the color of my skin. It's the car I drive, but someone's profiling me. That's what I felt. That's what I lived. Until I can get that out of me and communicate it to an officer or communicate it to my kids on how to interact with the officers. We've had these programs. We need more of them. But if you're on Los Olas, the experience is different if you don't look like me. And I think that's what the world is engaged in right now. And I don't think there needs to be any other group saying we're having the same problem. It is the Black perspective on how the relationships across this world with the police officers have deteriorated in some cases. In my case, we've had a good teaching moment both ways, but globally we haven't gotten there yet. And until we get there, there's going to be more George Floyds, unfortunately. But we can take this moment, and we can rise up from this, or this thing can go in a whole different direction. The whole country's watching, and I'm hoping and praying that we get this right, and maybe Vice Mayor, you can start having forums as well, and we could talk about other things in sewer. We could talk about relationships or get the perspective from the other side, and maybe that's what you were trying to get from the chief.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner. Commissioner Sorensen, did you want to add one more thing? Then we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, I got a couple things and a little bit more to talk about here. Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Well, we have to leave by 9 o'clock. So let's
Oh,
just.
why do we have to leave by 9 o'clock?
Because we have a curfew in this city, remember?
I think we can extend our meeting time and violate our own curfew to run the city government. Is that, I mean,
Well, we should try to respect our own rules if we expect other people to respect them. So, all right, go ahead. Let's see how much we can get done.
okay, thanks. Chief, so Sun Sentinel just came out with an article. You probably won't have had time to look at it, but it just looks at the officer's, record and, number of violent arrests that he's been involved in, number of times he's drawn his pistol while on duty and so forth. So it just goes, and again, the article, and again, who knows if this is accurate, but it basically says that the, it's all of his actions have been consistent with department policy. So again, the kind of full assessment of that, leave for for time to tell. But it just goes to that piece of I would like a little bit greater clarity just for my own understanding of kind of how many, what's the general, what is permissible, how many times and so forth. And again, you don't have to answer that now, but just kind of that education for me is going to be really helpful. So that I can, maybe give some feedback and say, okay, I think we're doing, the right thing in this number of incidences that are allowed seems to make sense, or have a dialogue around it.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Commissioner. And at some point we will, once the investigation is complete, we'll have a fuller understanding as to what was done, why it was done, and was it appropriate. So you're right. Those are good questions, but they probably can't be answered tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. One other point, Chief, and this is kind of just coming out. Let's see, I'm looking Miami Herald. There's allegation that we used a foam baton projectile. Maybe you've already seen that. Is that accurate? Were we using projectiles like that as well to the Sunday night?
Yes, we were.
Okay. And the allegation in the newspaper is that seems to violate our policy on munitions. Is that?
No. And, if you're being attacked, if you're getting thrown concrete at you and bottles at you, and, obviously you have to be able to defend yourself and take appropriate action.
Yep.
That doesn't violate our policy. I mean, obviously there's upwards of 1,000 people there, and depending on the size of the crowd, the desired target area is below the neck, and except for the groin. But obviously, with what's going on, you always strike the area you want to, and it is a piece of foam, but we err on the side of caution and say try to avoid the groin or the head, neck, or face because of the potential for injury that could be serious. But could any of those projectiles miss their intended target, or someone blocked it or deflected it and it hit somebody where we didn't desire to? Absolutely. And I know there was some question in there about dispersal orders. I was in the command center when we started getting, when it became violent. I actually said, give the dispersal order and wait 10 minutes while we were getting hit with things. And I said, and after 10 minutes, repeat the dispersal order and then wait 5 more minutes before we start moving the crowd and taking any action. And to be honest with you, before we had enough people in place to actually make an effective line and move, was probably about another even 15 minutes beyond that 15 minutes. And we continue to repeat the dispersal order, which basically says this is an unlawful assembly under Florida statute. You have to leave the area immediately or be subject to arrest. So from the time we gave the first dispersal order until we actually started moving people, there's just an estimate. We have it all timestamped, was probably about 30 minutes minimum. And we didn't arrest anybody other than people. The only people we had any type of enforcement action on were 2 folks that we found inside businesses. And they weren't even taken into physical custody. They will have charges to answer to, but when it came to people who threw things at the police, dropped concrete blocks on us off the parking garage, even when we, were able to see the agitators that were interacting with us, because I know some folks commented, if someone would have pushed an officer like that, they would have immediately been locked up. We made no arrests whatsoever. And, you look at our friends to the south in Miami, they made about 60, the night they had there. So really, we were just trying to get people to leave and return order to the area. And that's what we did. And to be honest with you, I think the departure was more organized than we thought, because it was complete chaos. And then almost as quick as you could blink your eye, they all disappeared at the same time. And they were spread out in different groups, but it was almost like a message went out, because within 5 minutes, the streets went from covered in people all over the place to a ghost town.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Chief. Again, appreciate it's the bar is so high, you know, it's just one misstep and then we're, you know, we're facing what we're facing, which is very difficult standard to have, but that's the standard it is when we're dealing with the public, dealing with these very difficult situations, and you're leading with excellence. And you know, just want to share this also, and then I'll turn it over to you, Mayor. But the last maybe 7 days, the chief has been on several, you know, online virtual forums, conference calls with me and folks in my district and so forth, and just fantastic, so helpful talking to folks. He helps them understand what the issues is, help them resolve things. So I just appreciate that, and you know, look forward to continue, you know, all you continue to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody. Chris?
No, in the interest of time, I'll just I'll throw out there. We typically at this meeting discuss if we want to have a meeting in the off week. I'm not sure exactly what would change between now and the 16th, but I throw that to the commission for their
Do we
feedback.
really, you know, in the past when we had these workshops, it was mostly to keep us apprised of the coronavirus and the response and so forth. I personally don't think we need another meeting. What do you?
I don't think we do either, Mayor.
Yeah,
I concur with you, Mayor.
Me neither.
Pass on it this time, right?
Now, Mayor, just the one question. So the next meeting would be the 16th. Would we have a conference meeting on the 16th or just the commission meeting at night?
I would like to figure a way to go back to the conference meeting. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's our answer. We'll figure out a way to go back to the conference meeting. We do have some items that are holding that are prepared for conference. We tried to bring a couple tonight at the end of the meeting, but probably won't go at 1:30. I just don't know that we can fill from 1:30 all the way to 6 and then 6 and on, with the amount of work that's come from committees that haven't been meeting. So, you know, what's coming forward is obviously a little bit less than normal. So we'll start that.
I kind of like what we did tonight, Mayor. How you put stuff a few minutes before the agenda. If we go an hour and a half before, you know, kind of keep it focused, we can just keep going.
Hey, maybe we could do it
4:30 or something.
Maybe
I
like
agree.
4:30 or
I
something.
agree with Commissioner.
We'll work on that. All right, very good.
The only other thing I want to bring up, just because I think I cannot talk to the commission about this, you know, collectively unless we're together, is I think there's some desire of some of the commissioners, as is evidenced by the fact that we have 3 additional commissioners in the building tonight, even though we're distanced. There's some desire to get back into a face-to-face meeting environment. Do you all as a commission want me to spend the time to figure out how we set up the chambers so that we can have face-to-face meetings, or do you want to continue these Zoom meetings through the break? There's 2 more meetings between now and our summer break. I need your feedback on this because I think the commission is split.
I would just say if we just go to get to phase 3, I could go like this until, you know, through the break, so that we send a good example to our city and that we're doing the right thing. I don't see how we can spread out and still be captured by the video. I'm upstairs, Heather's upstairs, everybody's in their respective places. I've been coming in and out of here, so I think we just keep going. Just my suggestion, there has to be a consensus that we keep going where we're going until we get the okay, and the mayor feels like we're good to go.
I agree. I want to have virtual as an option, at least, you know, till we get on the other side of the break.
Okay.
Okay, so that helps. Thank you.
All right, very good.
I agree.
Okay.
I knew where you were, Vice Mayor, so sorry.
But I'm still opposed to the fireworks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're over 65.
So
I am too, but I got to go with consensus.
Okay.
all right, so
Thank you.
let's switch over to commission reports. Commissioner Moritas, do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation tonight?
I'm going to wave tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to recognize Eileen Helfer from the beach community. We actually gave her a proclamation, Mayor. Thank you for the signature on that. We commended her for her activism and her exemplary community service. She actually has been the president of Harbor Haven Condominium for 27 years, and she just retired from that position. She's served on numerous boards. She also was one of the founding members of the Central Beach Alliance, so I wanted to recognize her this evening and thank her for all of her community work. Her condominium gave her a little bit of a gathering this past Friday, so that's great recognition for her. I also wanted to thank the FOP for donating 100 pizzas to the Village Place, which is a senior community affordable housing project in Flagler Village. And they donated those for lunch, and that was really, really wonderful. So I wanted to say thank you to the police for that. Chris, I'm still getting complaints and people having a difficult time with our waterway restoration website page. It seems that we still are not able to put testing results up there. And some of the testing results that are there, it seems that it ended, according to the website, in April and May in terms of the Tarpon River and also George English. But I think we need to just look at that page so that we can have more timely testing results. People are really looking at that and trying to see how we're doing with the testing of our waterways. Other than that, I think I've covered everything else throughout the evening. I just wanted to also, Chris, if sometime you could maybe think about it in our next 1 or 2 meetings left before the break. Folks had read your memo in terms of our financial picture going forward, but I think they need to hear from you maybe in an update before we have the break, maybe some sort of summary of what you put together in the 2 budget memos that we've had and what the COVID-19 impacts have been on our financial picture. I think that would be really helpful to the public in some sort of public forum, either the next 16th or I guess July 7th is our last meeting. And that's it from me, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let me respond to that
Yes,
just
go
real
ahead.
quick, Mayor, just so I can
ahead.
respond to the Vice Mayor. You'll actually have the first preliminary budget delivered to you before the break at the July meeting, so you have the opportunity to set the millage rate. So we'll make good with having that budget discussion. I'm reminded too by Laura that we just talked about the meeting of the 16th. There is a joint meeting of the Commission and the Budget Advisory Board planned for the 16th. From 3:30 until 5:30. So we'll see if we can slip some conference items in there, maybe between, do some conference between 5:30 and 6, or we'll get a couple items out of the way. But plan for the 16th at 3:30. It will be jointly with the Budget Advisory Board. Talking about the water testing results, those tests that you would have seen that would have fell off in April or May would have been those that we were doing as a result of the point source that we had in both the Tarpon River and George English. The test results that we would now be importing to our website are test results that the county would have done on our behalf. And so that we can import those test results as they're available to our website just for people's ease in reading them. But without a current point source in our waterways, we did, that one round of testing about 45 days ago now. But now we are back to doing testing based upon our NPDES permit. And not because we have a known point source.
Okay, very
Well,
good.
maybe on that website page, we can explain some of the reason that people are not being able to find the results they're looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. Commissioner McKenzie, would you like to add anything to your comments tonight?
I'll be brief. And what I wanted to do is just highlight a good protest in my district. The owner of Broomfield Grocery Restaurant and Bait and Tackle, been there in this community for 30 years at 1751 Northwest 22nd or 23rd Road, depending on where you are before you get to the stop sign, had a peaceful march with hundreds of folks. And we walked from, for you all's understanding, from like the street of Betty's to Sistrunk, west to 27th Avenue, and then we got to the police department, BSO, on the corner, and the crowd kneels on the sidewalk, and the purpose was to demonstrate how long 8 minutes felt for George Floyd with a knee on his neck. and my knees are still hurting tonight, but it was a peaceful demonstration. And our police department, in particular the motorcycle unit, participated and provided a platform and escort, and it was a peaceful demonstration with a purpose, no incidents. I want to thank Lori Broomfield and her family for organizing it, contacted us, let us vet it initially, and I wasn't too keen on it until I got more information and was talking with Louis Alvarez, assistant chief, through the night into the next morning until I felt comfortable, and we moved forward. So again, kudos to a peaceful march, and this is how you do it. You take this template and you use this, and it was local people, hundreds of them, walking, chanting, and even including, their thankfulness and their interacting with our staff. Thank you, Chris, as well.
All right, great.
That's it.
Good to hear. Thank you. Commissioner Sorensen, do you have any comments to add tonight?
Just one last comment. I'd just like to, thank the people of Fort Lauderdale. I mean, just everything we've been going through, and every day I'm just kind of amazed that our residents, our neighbors are as supportive of us and encouraging and standing together as a collective. And I'm proud to be part of that. I'm proud to be part of this commission where I'm so grateful for the respect and camaraderie and communication and willingness to work through these really tough things together. And so I just thank each of you, and thank you, Mayor.
All those are important words. I tell you, it's what we have gone through as a community in the last 6 months is amazing. Okay, I just have a few announcements to make. First of all, as many of you may have read, Bonnet House has been finally transferred back to the folks here in Fort Lauderdale. It's taken away from the state trust. We're really thankful that many people who worked to make this happen were successful, and this week it finally happened. So I want to thank everybody, Maxine Streeter, everybody on your board, Patrick, all those folks that worked so hard to make this occur. So thank you all for your contribution. I also want to say that the country of Taiwan visited us today, and they donated 3,500 face masks to the city of Fort Lauderdale to use at our discretion. And it was really, really very nice of them. David Chen, who heads up the office down in Miami, came up here with members of his staff and the local Taiwan Chamber of Commerce, and presented this gift to us. So any suggestions on how we're going to use them? We thought we'd use them at our front door when people come in next week when we start to open the building. Also, it might be a good idea if any of you want to take a pack or two and go out to visit homeless people on the street and give them face masks to protect them. But we have them here at City Hall. I just wanted to make that announcement. A couple of unfortunate things. We got 2 letters today. We were copied on letters of announcing that 2 very important hotels in our community are going to engage in major layoffs. The Weston Beach Resort announced temporary layoffs of 235 employees that now exceed 6 months. Also, the Marriott Harbor Beach announced temporary layoffs, furloughs, and temporary reduced hours for 564 employees, which will now exceed 6 months. So we're still not out of the water here. We really have a lot to do trying to revive our economy.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea, or have you had any discussions on the mayor's calls with the county when we might be looking at letting our hotels book some smaller groups, and obviously social distancing and keeping the numbers, the occupancy 50%, but at least allowing them the ability to have meetings and groups, which many of them are yearning for? I know that's been an issue for the 2 properties that you just mentioned, actually.
We're not there yet, Stephen. We're not there yet. The county and the mayor's discussions, that has not come up, but it's certainly I think that we're going to be able to draw closer to that opportunity once we move into phase 2. So I think that's going to be the opportunity that we'll have to start to expand group gatherings. But right now, that's definitely not on the table.
Okay, thank you.
But we do need to inquire with the county as far as youth programs and youth sports, because that has been authorized by the governor. And we need to work with the county administrator and her staff to see what we can do to try to open up youth programs and youth sports.
Right, and I understand, and as we do see some of these group activities come back online, I'm just trying to understand why a ballroom in a hotel that might hold 300 can't have a maximum of 150, and you keep people 6 feet apart. I don't know. I think it's doable, but
you make a very good point, but at this point it's not in any discussion that I've been a part of.
Okay, well, hopefully on your next call with them, you might want to just at least put a thought in their head. That would be appreciated.
Absolutely. We can quickly run to communications. We have 3 communications. We have a communication from the Sustainability Advisory Board. They want to meet with the City Commission to investigate and research water quality issues with the City of Fort Lauderdale. Do you want to have a joint meeting with the SAB to discuss that?
Yeah, so I think this communication may have a little age to it, because it was one that we talked about in February, where we sent them to do an investigation and research into water quality issues in Fort Lauderdale. And they sent back and said, let us know if you have any specific issues you want us to address. So that's what this communication is about. If you have anything specifically you want them to address. But again, it comes with a little bit of age, because this would have had a lot of relevance in March. We might need to touch back in with them and see what they've done since February, so that we're giving them the right information.
Well, I think that might also be relevant to the next communication. Again, it was a February communication, motion made by Mr. Crush to recommend to the City Commission that a member of the Beach Redevelopment Advisory Board be on the selection committee for the event producer position for activation of the beach parks. We're not there yet.
Correct.
So we'll have to table that recommendation to the point when we are going to start to activate beach parks. The last one is the Parks Board, Parks Recreation and Beach Advisory Board. This communication is with regard to asking the city to remove the one-stop shop from the list of possible site locations to house the federal courthouse. I can tell you right now that being a member of that committee, the committee is no longer looking at the one-stop shop, so it kind of has already happened.
Right.
Ready?
Great.
Okay. Any other business of the commission?
No other
Okay.
business.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.